Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts. Oops, I'm Voldemort. Chapter 31. As soon as Snape woke up, he rushed to Dumbledore's office. Now, he will not come back with these magic materials because he has no evidence. The Ministry of Magic has never considered legilimency as evidence because memory can be modified. But the losses totaling more than 1,000 galleons had to be reimbursed by someone who was taken advantage of. This person must not be the one being taken advantage of. When Snape rushed to the principal's office angrily, he discovered that another annoying peacock was also here. Please wait, Severus, Dumbledore said quietly. Good afternoon, Snape. Lockhart showed what he thought was a charming smile, which immediately annoyed Snape even more. Why did you come here too? Could it be that you found out that I planned to apply to the principal to organize a dueling club? News, so you came here to be my assistant. Duel club. Lockhart's words briefly pulled Snape out of his annoyance, and then came his contemptuous gaze, as if to say, just you. But Lockhart had no idea. He probably thinks he is the perfect candidate. Dumbledore, the situation is very serious now. Someone has been hurt. I think it is very necessary to organize a dueling club and fully train everyone in case they need to defend themselves one day. Protect yourself in the same way I have used countless times. And I am also a member of the Defense Against the Dark Arts Association. I think there is no one more suitable than me. He looked at Dumbledore with burning eyes, expecting to get a positive response from Dumbledore. It hardly took Dumbledore long to agree. This excited Lockhart greatly. Believe me, you will definitely be glad that you made this decision. He said, you are in luck. Although I promised you to teach this course, the club does not count. This is my own small contribution to my alma mater is not always possible. Thank you so much, Dumbledore said playfully. So, let me think about the candidate for your assistant. What about Phileas? He was a duel champion when he was young. Dumbledore strongly recommended. Lockhart's expression changed immediately when he heard the word, dueling champion, and he paced back and forth anxiously in the office, but he soon thought of a suitable excuse. Phileas, although he was indeed very powerful when he was young, but now, I doubt whether he can keep up with my pace. To tell you the truth, if wizard duels hadn't been cancelled in the UK, now maybe I will be the champion. Hearing this, even Snape found it very funny. At this time, Lockhart's eyes turned to Snape. He recalled Snape's behavior during school days. It seemed that he was often bullied by several Gryffindors. They were 4 years apart, and Lockhart wasn't very aware of Snape's performance during his school days. However, I still vaguely remember that there was a student in Slytherin house who didn't like to wash his hair and was often bullied by several people in Gryffindor. If this is the case, then he must have no ability. Also, what can a stinky-faced person who makes magic potions do? There's no way you can win a duel with the skill of burning a dry pot. Thinking of this, Lockhart's eyes lit up and he immediately used a provocation. Professor Snape, you are forget it, I'm afraid my powerful magic might hurt you. I'd better think about others. You hurt me, because of Quessy Hall. Snape laughed in anger, and looked at Lockhart with a very unkind look. It just so happens that I know a thing or two about dueling. That's great. Lockhart was afraid that Snape would refuse, so he rushed forward and slapped Snape's shoulders hard with both hands. That's it, Dumbledore. Snape will be mine assistant. Don't worry, I won't let the children's potions master be harmed. Snape swept his hand away from his shoulder in disgust, and at the same time rubbed the back of his hand mercilessly on his cloak. Now that you have reached an agreement, it couldn't be better, Dumbledore said happily, and he was about to see off the guests. So, Severus, what do you want to see me for? Snape was brought back into anger by Dumbledore's words, and he spoke before Lockhart even left the headmaster's office. I'm going to report a few thieves to you. They stole my potion ingredients. Have you been robbed? Lockhart, who was about to step out of the principal's office door, immediately turned around and strode over. It seems that my dueling assistant has encountered a little trouble. But catching a thief is not something I am bragging about. If you have read my books, you will know that I have done it countless times. Finding clues and finding the murderer will never be a problem for me. He turned around enthusiastically and spared no effort to take over the matter. Leave it to me, and the murderer can be caught and brought to justice as soon as tomorrow. But both Snape and Dumbledore ignored him. They had completed the communication just by looking into each other's eyes. The school director will compensate you for your losses, Dumbledore said. In addition, please pay attention. You don't need to tell me, I will pay attention to her. Snape flipped his cloak, turned and left. What's wrong? Lockhart was still wondering if Snape wasn't here to ask for help. Why did you leave so suddenly? He didn't want to miss any opportunity to be in the limelight, so he quickly followed him and chirped in Snape's ear. Seriously, Snape, if I take action, I will definitely be able to steal and win. Seeing as we are colleagues, I will help you for free, otherwise it will be another price. Come on, take me to your office, I have an automatic tracking magic, just use it and you can find the murderer immediately. Quote. Snape shuddered when he thought of his ability to make Harry's hand bones disappear and heal with a spell, fearing that his spell would explode all his other potions. And the thought of Harry's hand bones being taken away made him even more annoyed. I don't have to be old-fashioned to protect that kid, but this guy actually dares to let him, Lily's son, get hurt. You're done, kid. Dueling club. I will be happy to be your assistant. Snape smiled cruelly. Translation. Wait to die. But Lockhart was already lost in the illusion of his own glory. That's it. We will hold one before Christmas. You may be asked to help me give a small demonstration. Don't worry, it won't hurt you. We don't use powerful magic, only defensive magic, to remove your weapons and armor to protect yourself. Okay, this is a bit difficult, or else it's a disarming spell. Sellers felt targeted. Snape had been targeting him since he stole Snape's billion-dot collection last time. Usually when I was wandering around the school, he would suddenly appear from time to time, looking at me unscrupulously with a pair of gloomy eyes, as if he was interrogating a criminal who had committed a heinous crime. Cyrus guessed that he probably wanted legilimency, but it had no effect on him. As for class, not to mention, Snape almost had the words, "I don't like you," written on his face. Miss Weasley, could you please tell me how many effects dragon blood has? During the last potions class before Christmas, Snape called out Cyrus very pointedly and asked a question that made him feel heartbroken. 12, sir. Cyrus stood up. He almost thought Snape was going to ask him, what can you get by adding narcissus root powder to wormwood infusion? I didn't expect that it was just dragon blood that was useful. But this is indeed the content of the first grade textbook. The 12 uses of the fire dragon's blood were discovered and summarized by Principal Dumbledore. The blood of the fire dragon has the ability to stop bleeding, relieve pain, and treat. It can be used to make various cleansers, freckle removal potions, and treat warts. You're right, I could see that he was unhappy. Then, why don't you talk about the efficacy of phoenix tears? But sir, we don't learn from the phoenix, Cyrus said without any sign of weakness. But I think you might need to know about the uses of the tears of the phoenix, the venom of the rune snake, the mane of the chimera, so that you don't know what can save your life when you are poisoned. What do you say? He almost said openly that he already knew that Ginny Weasley, was the despicable thief. But Cyrus was unmoved and even expressed his gratitude. Thank you for your concern, sir. If I can really get so many expensive medicinal materials, I will definitely remember your warning today. Snape became even more angry. Now, you should tell me what morning dew can be used for. Who knows, maybe it's used to practice animagus. Cyrus shook his shoulders. Obviously, this is an extremely perfunctory answer, because Cyrus cannot have the pupa of the ghost-faced hawkmoth. And it wasn't even his own body. You better be, said Snape angrily. For almost the whole class, Cyrus faced Snape's difficulties, but he resolved them one by one. In the end, Snape deducted 5 points from Gryffindor on the grounds that you were restless in your position before I even said get out of class was over. He doesn't like you. Luna's unique voice sounded like her soul had been pulled out. Cyrus turned his head and saw a girl with bulging eyes and a strange dress. Obviously, Cyrus said, how could he beg a middle-aged teacher who was persecuted by him not long ago to like him? What's more, as we all know, the only person Snape likes is Lily. You look strange, but you're much better than before. Luna shook her hair briskly and jumped away like an elf. Cyrus couldn't help but be surprised by the other party's amazing intuition. He separated from his Ravenclaw classmates on the 8th floor. As he walked through the foyer, he found many people gathered at the bulletin board in the common room. What's going on here? They're going to have a dueling club. First party tonight. Fred and George, two good brothers, jumped out to explain to their sister, Ginny. I have a plan. Fred hugged his sister's shoulders with such enthusiasm and said excitedly, remember the last time you cast a spell on Marcus at the stadium? What, are you worried that he will take revenge on me? If he wanted to lose face, he wouldn't do it. Fred said, but I don't know if he would let other second and third year Slytherin students deal with you. But we agree that you shouldn't be afraid, right? George and Fred looked at him with affirmative eyes. Of course I'm not afraid. He can ask Snape to come in person. Cyrus didn't take it to heart at all. You're right, if you were so confident in front of Harry, he would definitely fall in love with you. Cyrus just rolled his eyes, but neither brother paid it any mind. Fred continued, we thought this was an opportunity as well. The Slytherin guys have been giving us trouble these days. It's rare to have an honest brawl. So, what do you want me to do? Find the underclassmen in Slytherin. It would be better if it was Draco Malfoy. George added, don't forget that his father also gave us trouble during the summer vacation. Give them a good fix. The two people said in unison, resolutely. If they're going to cause trouble, then of course I'm going to do that. Sellers nodded. Probably hearing their movements, Percy emerged from the crowd, blocked Cyrus behind him as if guarding against a thief, and looked at Fred and George warily. What are you two talking to Ginny about? It's nothing. The twins immediately looked at each other and raised the corners of their mouths. I just feel that the Slytherin students are in trouble. No matter what you are going to do, I advise you not to lead Ginny astray. Percy warned, or I will tell Mother. With that said, Percy dragged Cyrus away from the two troublemakers. Fred and George looked at each other, and then made exaggerated, funny and very hurt expressions at the same time. Oh my God. He actually thinks that we are going to lead Ginny. Ginny doesn't need us to lead the way. George added. The implication is that Ginny is a genius in her own right. She dares to cast a spell on 7th graders in the 1st grade. Who else can do it? Another meaning is that it was not them who led Ginny to evil, but someone else. They had long since discovered that Ginny often squeezed into the toilet with Harry and the others during this period. With 4 people together, it's not just exciting, it's simply exciting. Ignore them, Percy said as he patted Cyrus on the shoulder, you're not like them, Ginny. His tone was full of great anticipation. Almost all the professors have praised you and said that your performance is very good. Hermione also told me that you are easy to learn. This is a good thing. Percy said. He automatically ignored Snape because Snape never complimented anyone, let alone Gryffindor. If we continue like this, you can be like me and become a prefect in the 5th grade and get all the certificates. After the 7th grade, we can strive to become the president of the student union, and then enter the Ministry of Magic after graduation to seek a good job. Position, Percy said excitedly. Being the president of the Hogwarts student union still carries a lot of weight. After all, it is the only magic school in the UK. Almost as soon as Percy graduated, he became Barty Crouch's assistant. Although there are some other factors involved, there is no doubt that if you are planning to get a promising job at the Ministry of Magic, being the president of the Students' Union is enough to make the road smooth for you. Maybe you think these are too far away, but I think you should make plans early. First of all, I suggest that you take all elective subjects in the 3rd grade. I can't say more about the specific reasons. I just hope you can do it. Although it's a bit tiring, but you know, in a family like ours, many people actually look down on us. Percy paused, swallowed his words, and then patted Cyrus hard on the back. I shouldn't say this to you, but no matter what, work hard, okay? Don't imitate Fred and George, they are not good role models. Let alone Ron, he is too playful and has no goals at all. He never knows what he is doing. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Cyrus and Harry returned to the auditorium together. The appearance of the auditorium had completely changed at this moment. The long dining table disappeared, and a gilded stage appeared along one wall, illuminated by hundreds of candles floating in the sky. The ceiling became as dark as velvet again, and almost all the students from the school were here, crowded together, everyone holding their own wands, their faces full of excitement. The 4 people squeezed into the crowd relying on their small size. Hermione said with difficulty, I don't know who will teach us. I heard that Professor Flitwick was a dueling champion when he was young. Maybe it was him. No matter who it is, as long as it's not. Before Harry could finish his words, he saw two people he least wanted to see walking onto the stage. One of them was the dazzling Lockhart in a purple robe, and the other it was Snape with a gloomy face. It looked like a stark contrast to Lockhart, who wore black robes that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Harry's unfinished words turned into a sad moan. Hermione is very happy. She still thinks that Lockhart is as great as what is written in his books. As for his stupid behavior, they were all ignored under Lockhart's shining face. It's hard to imagine that Hermione could be so irrational. Lockhart alone made her fascinated. Sure enough, even in the wizarding world, appearance is a thing comparable to magic potion. Otherwise Tom Riddle wouldn't be so successful. He's just a scumbag who goes around deceiving young girls, rich women, and married men just because he's good looking. He even deceived female ghosts. Condemn. Must be condemned. What? Is this what I look like now? That's okay. Come around, come around. Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me? Great. Lockhart felt the enthusiastic support of hundreds of female students, and suddenly became more excited, sparing no effort the performance started. That's right, Professor Dumbledore allowed me to open this small dueling club to fully train everyone in case you need to defend yourself one day. Protect yourself in the same way that I have used countless times. For details on this, please see my published work. Let me introduce my assistant, Professor Snape, Lockhart said, grinning broadly. He told me that he himself knew a thing or two about dueling, and he generously agreed to help me with a small demonstration before class. I said, I don't want to let you little guys worry. After I finish the demonstration with him, I will return your potions teacher intact to you. You guys, don't be afraid. Wouldn't it be great if they fought it out and both sides would lose? Ron whispered in Harry's ear. Come on, I'm afraid Lockhart can't even catch Snape's move. Cyrus shook his head and said, I heard that Snape is the most powerful among the 4 deans. If he could freely use black magic, then Snape would indeed be stronger than the other 3 deans. His talent was also appreciated by Voldemort. After all, he was a genius who developed several types of magic during his school days. And according to Sirius, at the age of 11, Snape knew more curses and curses than most 7th grade students. Harry agreed very much with what Cyrus said, because he saw Snape's upper lip curled up, showing a very scary look, like a cat playfully playing with a mouse, and he didn't understand that Harry was heart still smiling. If Snape had looked at him like that, he would have spread his legs and run in the opposite direction. There are always people who even deceive themselves in lies. It's really sad, don't you think? Cyrus whispered in Harry's ear. Ron looked at him in surprise. Are you not shy now? Cyrus ignored him. At this point, Lockhart and Snape turned to each other and bowed. Lockhart did many tricks with his hands, but Snape just shook his head impatiently. Then they held their wands to their chests like arrows. The students all fell silent and watched this scene nervously. It was like a group of people watching the duel between 2 masters at the top of the Forbidden City, fearing that the slightest noise would affect the 2 masters. As you can see, we hold our wands in the normal dueling posture, Lockhart told the hushed crowd. On the count of 3, we cast our first spell. Of course, none of us can do it. The other person's life. I don't dare to bet. In response, Snape showed his teeth and smiled lowly. They both jerked their wands over their shoulders at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Snape uttered the curse at lightning speed. Expelliarmus. Suddenly a dazzling red light flashed, and Lockhart was struck unsteadily. He flew backwards off the stage, crashed into the wall, then slid off and curled up on the floor. He was almost fooled. Didn't you agree that you were just a potion refining person? Why is it so strong? Malfoy and several other Slytherin students applauded. Hermione jumped up and down on tiptoe. Do you think he's okay? She screamed, covering her mouth with her fingers. Whatever, Harry and Ron said at the same time. Lockhart staggered to his feet, his hat falling off and his wavy curls standing on end. Looking at the doubtful looks of those young wizards, Lockhart realized that he had to regain control of the overall situation and correct his ugly appearance. So he rushed back to the stage, the remaining power of the spell making him dizzy and walking crookedly. Well, you see, it's a disarming charm. As you can see, I lost my wand. Ah, thank you, Miss Brown. He turned to Snape. Yes, Professor Snape, it's a great idea to show them this move. However, don't mind what I say. Your intention to do such a move just now was too obvious. If I want to stop you without any effort, I think that in order to increase their knowledge, I might as well let them see. He is so shameless. Cyrus twitched the corner of his mouth. He dared to say that even though he was obviously inferior to others. Snape must be regretting that he used Expelliarmus instead of Expelliarmus just now. Film. Sure enough, Snape looked murderous. Lockhart probably noticed it, so he quickly said, "This is the end of the demonstration. Now I will come among you and divide you into groups of 2. Professor Snape, if you are willing to help me." They walked through the crowd and paired people up. Lockhart asked Neville and Justin Finch-Fletchley to form a pair, but Snape walked in front of Harry and the others first. "I think the dream team should be broken up," he said with a smile. "Weasley, you can form a pair with Finnegan. Potter." Harry subconsciously moved closer to Hermione. "I don't think so," Snape said, with a cold smile on his face. "Malfoy, come up here. Let's see what kind of person you can make the famous Potter into. Granger Miss, you can be paired with Miss Bursted. As for you, Ginny Weasley." The corners of his mouth turned up into an evil smile. Cyrus saw Malfoy walking over arrogantly, followed by a tall and round girl, who was obviously the Miss Pasteur that Snape was talking about. At the same time, he also saw Fred and George not far away hiding in the crowd and waving and cheering him up. Fred also tried his best to make lip syncs, telling him not to forget to teach the Slytherin students. "As for you, Ginny Weasley, I think there is someone who would be willing to partner up with you." Snape sneered. "Flint, here's your chance." He stepped aside half of his body, and then, a man stronger than a chimpanzee walked out with a cruel smile. The sounds in the hall suddenly became much quieter. Fred and George could no longer move their arms, as if they had been petrified by a basilisk. He finally went crazy. Ron couldn't bear it any longer and immediately spoke out his inner thoughts loudly. Snape immediately glared back with a fierce look, but this time Ron didn't give in at all. Isn't it crazy to ask a first grader to go against sixth graders? Not to mention that Marcus Flint had been sneak attacked by Ginny before, so he was obviously prepared this time. "Professor, I think this is too unreasonable." Percy walked out with a frown and stopped in front of Cyrus. "I can pair up with Flint. It is true that he is a good student, but this does not mean that he is willing to obey all the unreasonable demands of a professor." "The students are right." Lockhart rubbed his palms and said carefully. He didn't dare to refute Snape's opinion now, but Snape's allocation was too outrageous. "We hold the club for teach young wizards to have a certain ability to resist when facing danger, instead of. I think Flint is capable of playing a danger. What do you think?" Snape said with a smile. "Or is it that Miss Weasley, who is good at sneak attacks, looks down on this defeated general?" Others wanted to say something else, but were interrupted by Cyrus. "Just him." Cyrus nodded. "I think Professor Snape is right about one thing. At least he looks like a very dangerous, brainless troll. It turns out that Slytherin house, that's the kind of students we're recruiting now. It's a shame." These words immediately offended a lot of Slytherins. Malfoy, who was originally going to deal with Harry, wanted to cast a spell on Cyrus now. The most annoying person is of course Marcus Flint himself. "Just wait and see." He cruelly walked to the side and opened an appropriate distance. The rest of the students dispersed. Even the little wizards who had already chosen their opponents did not start their own duel at this moment. Instead, they watched the competition with a huge disparity in strength. The Slytherins even crossed their arms to watch the joke. Snape also looked at Cyrus expectantly. He wanted to see the true form of Ginny Weasley. Last year Dumbledore asked him to pay attention to Quirrell, but Quirrell became Voldemort's puppet. It's not yet certain who the Ginny Weasley in front of us is. How could a first-year wizard resist his legilimency? You shouldn't have agreed. Hermione pulled Cyrus' sleeve, and Ron and Harry were unwilling to leave. They each held their own wands, watching Marcus Flint warily to prevent him from sneaking up on him. "How about we go? There's no requirement to join the club," Hermione suggested. "It's okay, what's there to be afraid of?" Cyrus said nonchalantly. "We're with you." Ron firmly held the broken wand with magic tape on it and took a deep breath. "Don't cause trouble, but Harry can stay." Cyrus pushed Ron away and turned to Harry. "You can use the trick Lockhart taught you." "What?" Harry was confused for a moment. When had this loser Lockhart ever taught him the secret? I'll remove your bones. After saying that, Cyrus pushed Harry away, took out his wand and stood in front of Flint. The three Harrys wanted to follow, but Snape stopped them all with a flick of his sleeves. I think, your opponents are all on the other side. Several people turned to look, and Malfoy showed a ferocious smile. Here are some special moves. Okay. Lockhart's tangled features were almost twisted together. Hermione looked at him expectantly, hoping that he could stop this farce, but how could he dare to resist Snape now? Face your partner. Lockhart returned to the stage, shouting, take a bow. Cyrus immediately stretched his right hand to the side and bent down gracefully. But Flint seemed to have no intention of bowing. This didn't make Cyrus happy. You should bow. I won't bow to a little kid like you, Marcus said contemptuously. The Slytherins laughed loudly, obviously very proud of what Marcus did, and they probably thought it was an insult to Gryffindor. You disappoint me. Slytherin can be so ungraceful. Take a bow. Etiquette is required, Cyrus said, raising the arm holding the wand above his head, his wrist pointing down. Press the tip of the wand from top to bottom. Marcus, who was still laughing, suddenly felt his spine bend, as if someone was holding his shoulders hard. Those who were laughing immediately closed their mouths and looked at Cyrus with heart palpitations. Even Harry and the others felt a little frightened. They had probably never seen such a scary, Ginny Weasley before. Enough. Cyrus almost bent Marcus's waist to 90 degrees. If Snape hadn't cast a spell to interrupt him, Marcus's face would have been pressed to the ground. Lockhart was afraid that something might happen again, so he quickly shouted before the angry Marcus could get angry. Raise your wand and get ready. When I count to 3, I'll cast a spell to disarm the opponent. Just disarm, we don't want anything to happen. 1, 2, 3. But Marcus took action at the count of 2. He cast a fierce curse, but Cyrus dismissed it without even looking. He didn't give Marcus any more time to react and cast a spell without mercy. Marcus suddenly felt his ankle being pulled by a force, and then his body immediately turned over, and his whole body was hung on the gorgeous black velvet ceiling. Everyone in the auditorium was stunned, and Snape was awakened to some not-so-good memories. The golden bell falls to the ground. He pointed his wand, and Marcus immediately fell down with a snap. Ginny Weasley, how did you know this spell? Snape's eyes were gloomy and annoyed. Looking at Marcus being hung upside down, he almost seemed to see himself, new. Who taught you this magic, Ginny Weasley? He strode up to Cyrus, his thin body wrapped in a black wizard robe, and looked down at Cyrus. The curse that Cyrus used just now was naturally the upside-down golden clock invented by Snape. After this curse was accidentally leaked, it immediately became popular in Hogwarts, so much so that Snape was eventually killed by James Potter. Humiliate with the magic you invented. But after so many years, not many people still remember this mantra. But it just so happened that Cyrus knew the spell. Snape originally suspected that Ginny Weasley was possessed by Voldemort like Quirrell, but Voldemort was not interested in such boring tricks. Bill taught me that, Cyrus said immediately. When in doubt, I blame Bill on it. Anyway, he can't tell which pyramid in Egypt he is in now, and Bill went to school about 10 years later than Snape and the others. At that time, this spell was still popular in the school. Bill didn't teach me such a useful spell, Ron said extremely unbalancedly. Next time I will write a letter to scold him. William Arthur Weasley. Snape naturally knew about this man who had won 12 certificates. Since Cyrus said this, he had no way to tell whether it was true or false, so he had no choice but to give up. Dean, shut up. Snape gave Flint a hard look at this embarrassing thing. His face was extremely ugly. It was conceivable that Marcus Flint would become a shame to the entire Slytherin from today on. Upon seeing this, Harry immediately became happy. As long as Snape was unlucky, he would be happy enough. Snape obviously noticed this and vented his anger on Harry. It seems that some people see others winning the game and think they can be just as lucky. His eyes first turned to look at Harry sideways, and then his expressionless face turned around. Harry, why don't you find your own opponent? Do you think you can succeed if others succeed by luck? Malfoy. Draco first glanced at Marcus Flint with disdain, then confidently took a step forward. I'm here to meet you, Brat. Of course it was impossible for Harry not to fight. The other students also recovered from the previous battle and began to face their opponents. As a result, the scene immediately became chaotic. Everyone was casting jinxes, and the duel between Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw was relatively restrained, but Slytherin and Gryffindor could be said to be adding new hatred to old hatred, so how could they be merciful? Fred and George both found Slytherin's better, and Wood also secretly acted. There are even people who want to take advantage of the chaos to attack Cyrus, so that this enemy who has embarrassed Slytherin will also suffer. Of course, Cyrus was not polite about this and hung them all from the roof. More than 10 minutes later, when Lockhart shouted in a sharp voice to ask the students to stop, the ceiling of the auditorium was already covered with a large row of figures. From a distance, it looked like it was covered with rows of green figures. Bacon. Snape was trembling all over, and he didn't know whether it was from cold or anger. In the end, he didn't say anything. He just cast a large-scale universal anti-curse, removing Malfoy who was under the pimple curse and those who were under the dancing curse. Harry and the batch of dried snake strips on the roof were all put down. Oh my God, Lockhart jumped up and down in the crowd, looking at the aftermath of the duel. You stand up, Macmillan, look out, Miss Fawcett, pinch hard, the blood will come soon. Stop it, but. He regrets it now, regrets it very much. Both eyes became sluggish as if they had lost hope. I'm wrong, I'm really wrong, I should never have agreed to Dumbledore from the beginning. If I had not agreed to Dumbledore, I would not have been a professor of defense against the dark arts. If I had not been a professor of defense against the dark arts, I would not have fallen into such a sad place. If I had not fallen into such a sad place, I would not have to face such a lot of troubles. After finally stopping the commotion, Lockhart stood in the center of the auditorium with a flustered expression. He glanced at Snape and saw the cold light in Snape's black eyes, and immediately looked away. I think I'd better teach you how to stop unfriendly magic. Please volunteer to come up with a pair. Longbottom and Finn, really, how do you do? He said it was voluntary, but he took the initiative to select 2 classmates who were not outstanding. At least this way, even if he caused trouble, he also capable of solving it. This is a bad idea, Professor Lockhart, said Snape, gliding across the stage like a large, vicious bat. Longbottom can wreak havoc even with the simplest of spells. That way, we had to put Fanglioli's remains in a matchbox and send it to the hospital. Neville's round face immediately turned red, not because Snape said bad things about him, but because Snape had completely misremembered him and Seamus. At this time, Cyrus felt Snape's gaze sweep across his body first, and he immediately raised his eyebrows in return. He wanted to see if Snape dared him to go up and fight Malfoy. Snape's eyes scanned Cyrus and Harry, and it could be seen that he actually hoped that the person who was going to make a fool of himself at this moment was Harry. But when he thought of what Dumbledore had said to him not long ago, he still aimed his snake-like eyes at Cyrus. What about Ginny Weasley and Marcus Flint? What? Although Lockhart had originally planned to never refuse no matter who Snape proposed, he was still shocked when Snape said these 2 names. I don't think this is appropriate. I hope you remember that Miss Weasley is only in her first year. Lockhart said with a troubled face. Yes, quite outstanding. Snape said every word, but I think we can give the loser a little tolerance, right? He looked at Lockhart, the murderous intent in his eyes was undisguised, making Lockhart feel terrified. Okay, great, then Miss Weasley and Mr. Flint. How dare Lockhart disobey Snape and quickly pulled Cyrus to his side. Okay, Ginny, this is what you do when Draco points his wand at you. He raised his wand and waved it left and right, trying to conjure complicated tricks, but accidentally dropped it on the ground. If you can't give any good advice, please get out of the way, sir. Cyrus was tired of him and pushed him away with his hands. Ginny will win, right? Ron was very worried. Of course. Didn't you see how Ginny showed off her skills just now? And the professor just taught him a few tricks. Hermione said with confidence while arranging her messy hair. She still hasn't seen Lockhart's true face. If you mean dropping the wand on the ground, that's true. Ron said, unhappy. And he could see that Snape was the real one. Maybe he would teach Flint a powerful spell. It's okay, Ron, we have to trust Ginny. Harry patted Ron's shoulder hard, and he still had an unreal feeling. For the first time, Snape would actually target someone else in front of him. Ron's guess was right. When Marcus Flint walked up to Snape, The gloomy big bat immediately stretched out its claws and grabbed him, and said semi-threateningly, "Give you another chance, Flint. I don't want to hear any more excuses." Snape said coldly. But on the other hand, if Ginny Weasley was as he suspected at this moment, Flint would never win. "Yes, sir. I'll teach you a spell," Snape whispered in his ear. Quote. Marcus Flint strutted onto the duel platform. He looked at the petite Ginny, standing not far away. On one side was the fear left after several defeats, and on the other side was the contempt for a first-year student. But no matter what, he was really nervous at the moment. Slytherin has made enough jokes. If he loses again, he will either transfer to another school or die. Marcus Flint stood on a high stage at the same time as Cyrus. The stage looked a bit like it was built with dining tables. Flint looked at his opponent warily while blushing with shame. He was a 6th grade student, but he had to fight against a young wizard of the same grade under the gaze of nearly 1,000 pairs of eyes. And the other party seemed so relaxed and at ease, not taking him seriously at all. He felt humiliated and embarrassed, but in fact, except for the Gryffindor students who were deliberately heckled, none of the other students felt that there was anything inappropriate about it. After all, a few minutes ago, the first-year student named Ginny Weasley turned a dozen Slytherin students into dried snakes and hung them from the ceiling of the auditorium. "I'm going to teach you a lesson this time," Flint said in a serious tone. He really had no confidence, and he was sweating just looking at Cyrus's fingertips twirling the wand. "I hope you can perform better, otherwise Slantlin's level will really disappoint me," Cyrus said nonchalantly. For a guy like Flint who has more brawn than brains, Tom Riddle could teach him a lesson at the level of a first-year curse. To be honest, it might be more dangerous for him to rush over with his fists while holding a wand. "Come on, I'll give you a move," Cyrus said generously. "You can cast the spell first, or you can do a sneak attack." His arrogant attitude made Flint grit his teeth, but the Slytherin gorilla did not refuse. He just clenched the wand tightly and breathed hard. "Don't be nervous, Marcus, you were just careless before." Single quote. He kept telling himself in his mind. "She's just a first-year wizard, you can't lose." Single quote. Lockhart started again, but this time Flint didn't take the lead. He kept looking at Cyrus vigilantly, ready to defend at any time, fearing that the same spell he cast before would be deflected by Cyrus. "What's wrong? You don't want to do anything." Cyrus felt a little ridiculous when he saw Flint's timid appearance. He originally looked like a gorilla, but now he looks more like a turtle with a shrunken head. He took a step forward, and Flint immediately couldn't help but take a step back. This embarrassing look made the Slytherin wizards couldn't help but curse. "What are you doing, Flint? A shame. Teach her a lesson." "Quit school, you loser," Malfoy scolded the loudest. It was as if they were not the ones who were afraid of Ginny, as if they were the brave ones, and Marcus was the only cowardly loser. Marcus glared at him fiercely, and Malfoy immediately shrank his head and did not dare to speak. Now, the gorilla was finally forced to do something about it. He raised his wand. Cyrus was glad he remembered that he was a wizard, and fired a stunner. Cyrus knew it was a coma spell because Marcus said it loudly. He hasn't mastered the secret of silent spells yet, that is, he can cast those small evil spells that are not on the table more smoothly. Cyrus had no defense. He turned his head slightly to dodge the over-the-top attack. A duel is not as simple as standing around and firing magic spells. The battle with Marcus even made Cyrus find it very boring. He gave the opponent a few moves, or in other words, his intention to release the spell with Marcus was so obvious every time that Cyrus easily dodged it. This was too easy for him, but the audience in the audience were terrified. From their perspective, Ginny Weasley didn't fight back for some reason, but could only avoid Marcus's attacks. Every time Marcus's curse rubbed, Ginny's little body flying over, hitting the wall hard. "Ginny, fight back," Ron yelled in fright. "Knock her down, Flint." The wizards of Slytherin were not to be outdone. Everyone in every house is very nervous. People in 3 houses are worried about Ginny, but the Slytherin students are looking forward to it, hoping that Flint can avenge his shame. Even Marcus Flint himself thought he had the upper hand. He shot out more and more curses and aggressively attacked while approaching, trying to put more pressure on Cyrus. Ginny Weasley. But that's it, he thought, feeling that he had a chance to win. Only Snape could see that Cyrus was at ease, and even at ease was a euphemism. She didn't take Flint seriously, Snape thought. His eyes were very gloomy. A first-year freshman who has only been in school for half a semester can defeat a sixth-year wizard. This is already a fantasy outcome. Not to mention that the difference in strength between the two people now is almost as big as clouds and mud. No need to think too much, there is definitely something wrong with Ginny Weasley. You bore me terribly, Mr. Flint. On the stage, Cyrus was tired of this kind of childish playhouse battle. He flicked his wrist and his wand made a whooshing sound in the air. Flint's powerful spell was actually shattered by Cyrus in front of him. The seemingly powerful spell was just a useless firework in Cyrus's eyes. Marcus paused, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him. The indomitable momentum just now was extinguished. Now holding the wand, he was stared at by Cyrus's eyes, and he actually felt fearful. Cyrus slowly picked up the wand and shot a powerful spell. The light of the curse instantly illuminated the astonished faces of the circle of young wizards surrounding the stage. They subconsciously closed their eyes and couldn't help but take a step back. Armor for protection, Marcus Flint shouted urgently. Boom, then a muffled sound was heard, as if a firecracker had exploded. The stage seemed to shake a few times. What's the matter? Ron asked timidly. Harry never moved his eyes. Flint blocked the spell. Flint was swaying on the stage, as if he was drunk, and his hands were numb, but he still blocked the spell. Flint breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, at least the curse could be blocked, right? But he didn't know that this was just the power that Cyrus used for dueling. What's more, a qualified iron armor spell should not only block attacks, but also rebound the power of the spell. How many times can you block it, Flint? Cyrus asked teasingly. Marcus looked at the cute face of Ginny, but swallowed in fear, as if what he saw now was not a cute little girl, but a ferocious beast. He couldn't help but take a few steps back, but heard another, more terrifying sound coming from behind him. Use the spell I taught you, Flint, Snape roared in his characteristic way of speaking. Flint was shocked and took another step in the direction of Cyrus. Instead of becoming braver, it felt like there were thorns growing on his back, forcing him to move forward. Oolong comes out of the hole. The front end of his wand exploded, and a black snake sprang out of the wand, landed heavily on the ground, raised its body, opened its fangs, and started roaring. The little wizards surrounding him immediately jumped away in fear, their faces turning pale. Marcus watched the spell taught by Snape take effect and immediately looked at Cyrus with pride. Yet he could see no fear on Cyrus's face. In fact, Cyrus was looking at the little black snake he summoned. Compared with the basilisk, it is as small as a black snake, but it also grins. It doesn't look scary at all, but rather cute. What's wrong, Flint? Don't tell me you plan to scare me with this thing. Cyrus chuckled. He controlled Parseltongue very well and would not say it without knowing it like Harry did. Snake language. It's okay, the little ones are cute too. Flint felt that he had been humiliated. Although he had been humiliated enough during this period, he still couldn't swallow this breath. Seeing Cyrus's annoying look, he simply became heartbroken and cast another spell at the snake. This time it's a swelling spell. The black snake seemed to be inflated, and it immediately swelled. Its head almost reached the ceiling, and with a powerful sweep of its tail, Flint himself was knocked away first. The auditorium suddenly fell into chaos. The little wizards screamed and ran around like a pot of rats, only to bump into each other. Lockhart's legs gave way and he fell to the ground. The auditorium was filled with the screams of the little wizard. Many witches were frightened and fainted, and even Snape turned pale. Of course, Snape wasn't afraid of a snake that was a million points bigger. Being able to be affected by the expansion curse proves that the snake itself is not a magical animal and does not have much magic resistance. It only needs a magic spell to kill it. But now that there is such a huge commotion, what should the little wizards do if they are injured? He couldn't help but resent Flint, this useless idiot, who taught him to use the expansion spell on summoned objects. But at this moment, Flint had been knocked unconscious by the big snake he had conjured. Calm down. Snape had to add a spell to his voice so that it could reach the ears of every young wizard. This was probably the only time in his life that he spoke so loudly that Harry felt like his ears were filled with Snape's voice, which made him sick for a while. Ginny, run, Ron's face was full of panic. He, Percy and the twins wanted to rush forward and pull Cyrus back, but the little wizards were all running away. Almost 1,000 people were crowded together, like it was the offshore tide that took them farther away. Hermione was completely panicked. She didn't know what to do, and her mind went blank until Harry called her to stop her. "Send me there, Hermione." "What? Send me to Ginny?" Harry shouted anxiously. "But, what to do?" "Use the levitation charm on my clothes." Harry quickly came up with an idea. "Okay, I get it." If Hermione had been calmer, she would have thought that instead of sending Harry there, it would be better to bring Ginny over directly. But now she couldn't turn around and could only passively follow the instructions. Fortunately, she hasn't forgotten the spell yet. Yuga di Leviosa. As Hermione raised her wand, Harry immediately felt as if his clothes were caught on something and flew up with him. His field of vision suddenly became higher. He loved to see Hermione's panicked face, and saw Ron, who was originally with them but was squeezed away. He tried desperately to get closer to Ginny but was tripped by Draven. George and Fredo was caught by Lee and Wood. Percy's physical strength was not very good. Harry only saw his face struggling and being drowned by the crowd. Harry quickly felt himself spinning, and then he was slammed onto the stage, between Ginny and the giant black snake. Harry, Pote, Cyrus and Snape made surprised sounds at the same time. "Why are you here, Harry?" Cyrus asked calmly. Harry wanted to speak, but his hand was sprained when he fell to the ground, and the pain made him gasp. "Don't move, Weasley, let me do it." Snape took a step forward, his heart hanging, fearing that Harry and Cyrus' little move might offend the snake. He didn't dare to cast a spell directly to kill it. Even if the poisonous snake was dead, it was still dangerous. Even if it only had one head, it could bite through a person's body with its fangs. But Harry felt that he couldn't listen to Snape. He can talk to snakes. He took a step forward without thinking much, his eyes looking directly at the black snake. Cyrus looked at Harry's little back and could see that Harry himself was actually very scared. But Ginny Weasley was his best friend's sister, so he could risk his life to save her. Of course Cyrus didn't need his help. "Harry, you don't need." But Harry had already opened his mouth and made a hoarse, terrifying sound. The Great Hall suddenly fell silent, which was much more effective than the amplifying spell Snape had used. The huge black snake suddenly became quiet, leaned over and put its head on Harry's chest, looking so docile. "It's okay, Ginny." Harry breathed a sigh of relief, reached out and touched the black snake's head, and then turned his head. Only then did he realize that something was wrong. 1,000 people in the entire auditorium stared at him in horror. "What's wrong?" Harry looked confused. But before anyone could respond to him, Cyrus grabbed his wrist and jumped off the stage with him. "What's wrong? Stop talking and leave." Ron rushed over quickly and grabbed Harry's other hand, and Hermione quickly followed. Wherever they passed, everyone quickly made way. They looked away from Harry almost as if they were seeing the snake itself. They were silent all the way until they rushed from the first floor to the tower and arrived at the empty Gryffindor common room. Ron then asked, "You're a Parseltongue. Why didn't you tell us?" "What am I?" Harry didn't understand, but he obviously realized something was wrong. "Parseltongue." Cyrus pretended as if it was the first time he knew such a surprising thing. "You can talk to snakes." "I know," said Harry. "I mean, this is the second time I've done it. One time at the zoo, I accidentally let a python out, and the python said something to my cousin. I pounced on it. It's a long story. At that time, the python told me that it had never been to Brazil, so I unknowingly let it out. I didn't mean to. At that time, I didn't know that I was a wizard." "A big python tells you that it has never been to Brazil?" Ron asked in a weak voice. "What's the matter?" said Harry. "I bet a lot of people here can do that." "You're wrong, Harry." Cyrus shook his head. "There are very few people who understand the language of snakes. Very few, and very poorly." "What's so bad?" Harry asked. "But if I hadn't told the snake to quiet down, it might have attacked you." "Oh, that's what you said to him?" "What do you mean? You were there. You heard me." "We couldn't understand. I heard you speaking in Parseltongue, the language of snakes. It could have been anything you said. It sounded like you were egging on the snake. It was creepy. You know," Sellers said. He certainly has this ability, but unlike Harry, he has more control over Parseltongue. Of course, I know you would never harm me, but they don't think so. Harry stared at him dumbfounded. I spoke another language. But, I didn't realize, how could I speak another language and not know it? Ron shook his head. Both he and Hermione looked heavy-hearted, as if someone had died. Harry didn't understand what could be so terrible. But even if this is the case, so what? You believe me, this is enough. You know that I intend to save you, right? He said to Cyrus, in this case, will I, and what does it matter if the snake talks? It's very important. Hermione finally lowered her voice, because Salazar Slytherin is famous for being able to talk to snakes. Therefore, the symbol of the Slytherin school is a snake. Harry's mouth dropped open. That's right, Cyrus said. Now, everyone in the school will think that you are a descendant of Slytherin, but his great-great-great-grandson or something. They will think that you are the one who opened the Chamber of Secrets. Descendants of Slytherin. But I'm not, Harry said. He had a panic he couldn't explain. You'll find this hard to prove, said Hermione. He lived about 1,000 years ago. From all we know, it's likely that you are his descendant. Not to mention, Cyrus looked into Harry's eyes and pursed his lips, not to mention, rumors never require your consent. Harry was immediately struck by a silent force. The four of them were silent for a while. Harry was upset. Cyrus slowly walked to the window. At this time, it started to snow outside the window. Cyrus was also thinking about something, and for a while there was only the sound of firewood burning in the lounge. It wasn't long before Harry and Ron went back upstairs to rest. He was probably worried that the club members would come back after a while. To be honest, Harry didn't know what to do if something like this happened. Escape seems to be the easiest option. Cyrus and Hermione were the only ones left in the common room. The little witch picked up the book and read for a while, feeling a little sleepy. Shall we go and rest too? Hermione said to Cyrus, but how about taking a bath first? It's a bit cold. Cyrus, okay, there are many bathrooms in Hogwarts where you can take a bath. In fact, there are bathhouses in the dormitories. It's just that unlike a luxurious place like the prefect's bathroom, the dormitory's bathhouse is just a public bathhouse separated for men and women. Cyrus was using Ginny's body, so naturally he could only enter the women's bathhouse. It wasn't cold at all in the bathhouse. After the shower was turned on, warm water flowed down. Of course, Hogwarts does not have solar energy or water heaters, but water can be heated using magic. The bathroom was filled with mist. Cyrus sat with another small tablet, and Hermione carefully washed her fluffy hair. Ginny, could you rub my back? I can't reach it. Of course, Cyrus said calmly. He is not a Lolita fan, and he has no interest in Hermione, a little girl, for the time being. Early the next morning, Cyrus walked down with Ginny's body, which seemed to be much energetic, and found Harry sitting next to the burning fireplace without saying a word. Ron and Hermione are playing wizard chess. What's wrong with you? Don't you go to class? There is only herbal medicine class today, and it has been cancelled. Ron turned around. It's snowing, and Professor Sprout needs to put socks and a scarf on Mandrake. Then Hermione whispered in Cyrus's ear, it's quite difficult for Harry. You know what happened yesterday, everyone was avoiding him. I think I can help explain it to you. Cyrus thought for a while and said. But Harry had already stood up from the sofa. No, thank you. I don't care what they think of me, as long as you believe in me, that's enough. Where are you going? Ron saw Cyrus and Harry walking out together. He remembered that Ginny's class today seemed to be in the afternoon. Eat breakfast. I'm going to get some air. Cyrus and Harry left the lounge together. Sure enough, there was a snowstorm outside the castle. Thick, gray snowflakes were dancing in the sky, blocking every window. The castle was much darker than usual during the day. Don't worry too much, Harry. I believe they will understand soon that you would not do such a thing. Everyone knows that you are an upright person. Cyrus comforted. Thank you, Ginny. Harry smiled reluctantly. He didn't have much hope for this. Just like Ginny said yesterday, those people don't care what the truth is. They just need a talk. With so many things going on, they need an outlet for their emotions. It doesn't matter if it's him or not, and it's better to be him. Who makes him the famous Harry Potter? It is always extremely satisfying to associate a famous person with those bad things. It's as if just doing this makes them look more awake than others. The two people did not go together, but soon separated. Cyrus did not go to the hall to eat, but turned around and went to the bathroom on the third floor. The attack must continue. The attack is not for the attack itself, but only by creating panic will the events in Hogwarts receive attention, and only in this way can Cyrus find a way to temporarily drive Dumbledore out school. Otherwise, even if he is resurrected, he will not be Dumbledore's opponent. Soon, he came out of the bathroom alone. At this moment, the basilisk was already walking through the pipe. Cyrus walked the corridors, looking for his next target. It was snowing heavily outside. Thick, gray snowflakes were floating in the air, and the corridor was filled with wind. He quickly found a target in Justin Finch-Fletchley, a second-year Hufflepuff wizard from the Muggle world. He looked like he was going to the kitchen to get some extra stoves, along with a friend of his. Cyrus didn't know him, but that didn't matter. He cast a disillusionment charm on himself and followed them. "Ernie, do you think Harry Potter will really be the heir of Slytherin?" Justin asked his companions as he walked. "To be honest, I only knew about the Parseltongue you were talking about yesterday. There is such a thing. I think it's almost the same. That's the exclusive ability of dark wizards," Ernie said confidently, "and you saw it, he was so scary when he talked to that snake yesterday." "Maybe you're right," Justin nodded seriously. Cyrus had already walked to their side. He took out his wand and waved it near Justin's temple. "The soul is out of body." Justin's eyes immediately became wandering, as if his soul had been taken away by Cyrus. He stopped. "What's wrong?" Ernie asked strangely. "Nothing. I remembered that I have something to do and I have to go back first." "Can you get me a cup of hot pumpkin juice?" Justin said numbly under Cyrus' control. Ernie had no doubt that he was there. "Then you have to be careful on the road. I remember you told him that you were born as a Muggle, right?" "I will be careful." Cyrus controls Justin and leaves. Fortunately, due to the weather, there were very few people in the corridor today. It was too cold and it was still snowing. If the snow stopped, there would be many people hanging out. He took Justin to search for traces of ghosts in the castle, and soon met the headless Nick who was wandering in a dark corridor. Then, he lifted the imperious curse from Justin. The confused wizard hadn't figured out what was going on and looked around blankly. "Why am I here? Why are you here? You were really confused. Didn't you come here by yourself?" Nick tilted his head almost fell off, and said with confusion. "Are you the Gryffindor ghost? What are you doing here?" "Nothing, just solving problems," Nick said sadly. "Also, I found that the window here was open. I wanted to close it for you, but then I found out that I was dead and was a ghost." As he was talking, he suddenly noticed an expression of extreme fear on Justin's face, and then he fell straight down as if he was frightened out of his body. "What? I am a ghost, am I so scary?" Nick looked ridiculous. "I remember that I make an appearance every year when the little wizard first enters school." He turned his head with a strange expression. Now he knew why Justin was so scared. Justin was petrified. Also petrified was Nick, who was almost headless. A terrifying attacker. Even the dead Nick can be hurt. What's worse is that Harry once again, coincidentally, appeared at the scene of the crime. And he was caught red-handed. Now, he was taken to Dumbledore's office by Professor McGonagall. Cyrus bit into a piece of bread and squeezed into the crowd, pretending to be completely unaware of the commotion. "You came just in time, Ginny." Ron saw him as if he had seen a savior. From the looks in his and Hermione's eyes, it was easy to see that they were expecting Cyrus to give some useful information. "Ginny, you and Harry went out together. Did you find anything?" Ron asked eagerly. "No, I went directly to the restaurant." Hearing this, Ron immediately showed a disappointed expression. Hermione then explained what Cyrus knew best. "If we didn't know Harry well, maybe even we would think he was the murderer. Harry Potter is George, the heir of Slytherin." Fred shook his head with a smile and looked at his brother. George was just as ridiculous as he was, but they thought it was funny. "The most evil wizard in the world, Harry Potter, is a Gryffindor, and now we have defeated all the Slytherins." George said cheerfully, "What a pity, there are always no such coincidences, otherwise we can find out who the attacker is." George and Fred's words immediately made Cyrus think twice. The Marauder's Map. This God's Perspective map, which can be called an artifact, is perfect for finding criminals. However, in order to prevent the map from being revealed, the twins naturally could not take out the map and look at it all the time. But what if the next time I plan to attack someone, they happen to take out a map? Cyrus can't guarantee that the trajectory of everything now will be exactly the same as in the original work. And now that Dumbledore was doubting himself, the map could always come in handy if he planned to escape from Hogwarts. Even just confirming Dumbledore's location would add a lot of insurance to him. So, he immediately walked towards the twins and pulled them aside. "What, Ginny? I always feel like she has bad intentions. I am your sister, what bad thoughts can I have?" Cyrus said with an innocent face. "Let me ask you, how did I behave last night? Did I deal with Slytherin hard? Emil. That's true. You satisfy your brothers." Fred and George immediately sang in harmony, recalling Slytherin's performance in the duel club yesterday, and said happily, "I think they will not be able to hold their heads up for at least this year." "A whole year. I dare say they will suffer as long as Ginny is at Hogwarts. Since I performed so well, can you do me a favor?" Cyrus showed them both the map of Yan State, and now he was finally about to reveal his dagger. It's just that Gemini was not fooled at all. "What does your taking care of Slytherin have to do with us?" Fred knew without even thinking that his sister was going to make some embarrassing demands. "In the final analysis, that gorilla in Flint wants to deal with you. It's to avenge your curse." "That's right. Even if you go back a little further, you did it for Ron. So you should ask Ron for help," George said immediately. "But you asked me to be cruel to the Slytherin students before the duel club started." And, Cyrus secretly glanced back at Ron, "Do you really think Ron can help?" The two brothers also subconsciously looked at the stupid Ron, and for a moment they felt that Cyrus' words could not be refuted. "I was convinced by you. Especially the second half of the sentence." The two asked in unison. "Okay, let's see what help our dear sister wants. Do you still remember when you saved me on the first day of school?" "You mean the secret passage?" Fred pretended to be stupid. "No." Cyrus raised his voice, but he was worried that others would hear the conversation, so he lowered his voice again. "I mean your method of not seeing others but knowing where they are. Maybe you can use it to find the real person. The murderer. It seems that our sister is eyeing the secret of our success, George." "I'm not surprised at all, but no," George said immediately. In fact, what Sellers said coincided with their original idea, and they actually tried it. "It's impossible to succeed, Ginny. No one knows when the successor will launch an attack. You can't stare at the map forever. You have to give it a try," Cyrus said. "Now that so many victims have appeared, and Harry has been wrongfully accused, we can't let the murderer continue to be rampant. Give it to me, or I will tell Dumbledore profitable." Hearing this, Fred and George looked very hurt. "Did you hear that? Our good sister is threatening us." "I heard Fred. There's nothing wrong with my ears." George immediately responded with a look of sorrow on his face. "Get it out quickly if you don't want the professor to know." "No, we'd rather the professor knew." Cyrus didn't expect that for this reason, they were still unwilling to take out the map. This made him very confused. "Why, when I find the murderer, I will return the map to you." "No, this is too dangerous, Ginny. We don't want to hear about you being petrified. Dumbledore said that this kind of petrification spell must be cast by someone who is proficient in dark magic, and you are only in the first year." Although the twins may seem a bit heartless, in fact, they still care about their sister very much. "I'm better than both of you," Cyrus said with a straight face, "and you think I will be safe after defeating and humiliating those Slytherin students? What if the heir really comes from Slytherin? Then he must hate me very much." "But you're a pureblood." Fred was shaken. "I am, but there is no evidence that that person will not attack purebloods, right? The writing on the wall says, 'Those who are enemies of the successor, be cautious not, mudbloods, be cautious.'" Cyrus said the two of them were unable to refute. "If I can know the location of others in advance, maybe I can know who is going to attack me, right? It makes sense." "Okay." The two men hesitated for a while, but finally thought that what Cyrus said was right. It is easy to dodge an open spear but hard to guard against a hidden arrow. "Give it to her. Anyway, we are almost done with it." George also nodded. They then led Cyrus outside the common room. The snowstorm continued and it was so cold outside that almost no one was still outside. But just in case, the two of them found an empty classroom and locked the door. Then Fred took out a square piece of paper from his robe. To be honest, I'm quite reluctant to part with it. That's right, I think back then, we were only in the first grade, young, carefree and innocent. Cyrus smiled immediately. Ah, more innocent than now. We had a bit of trouble with Filch back then. So he pulled us into his office and started threatening us with his usual threats. And we couldn't help but take aim at one of his filing cabinet drawers, which was marked, confiscated items, highly dangerous. Hey, what would you do if it were you? Fred said. George threw another dung bomb to distract him. I immediately opened the drawer and caught this. It's not as bad as it sounds, you know, said George. We reckon Filch never figured out how to use it. But he probably guessed what it was, or he wouldn't have confiscated it. Do you know how to use it? Oh, I know, Fred said with a proud smile. This little baby has taught us more than all the teachers in the school. He pulled out his wand, tapped the parchment, and said, I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. In an instant, thin lines of ink spread like a spider web from where the tip of George's wand touched, connecting, crisscrossing, and extending to every corner of the parchment. Then words appeared on the top, green. Large floral letters. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs. Gentlemen who are here to help magical mischief makers. Introducing Marauder's Map. The map showed all the details of Hogwarts castle and grounds, but what was most unusual was that there were many small black dots moving across the map, each with a name in tiny font. In addition to marking everyone's location, it also marked many secret passages. The one we went to last time was the one leading to Hogsmeade. But we were worried about you running out alone, so we lied to you about the secret passages inside. It's blocked, but now, we have to admit that you are really capable. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. George patted the title of the map and sighed, thanks to them. What a noble man, working tirelessly to help a new generation of disciplinary students. Fred said solemnly. Yes, George agreed briskly, don't forget to dispose of it after use. Otherwise everyone can see it. Fred warned, just tap it again and say, prank over. And it becomes a blank sheet of paper again. Okay, little Ginny, said Fred, imitating Percy in a weird voice, just take care of yourself. After Cyrus took the parchment, he immediately put on the same solemn expression, thank you, I will return it to you when I'm done using it. After getting the Marauder's Map, Cyrus couldn't help but study it. It was something developed by a few students, but the effect was unexpectedly powerful. Sellers couldn't help but lament that students during the war years were just different. Look what the students at Hogwarts are busy doing right now. As a role model, the prefect is actually in love. And he's still banging in the women's restroom. It's you, Percy. Cyrus stood at the door of the bathroom on the 3rd floor. He originally just wanted to see how the compound potion was being refined, but now he looked at the man and woman appearing in the women's bathroom and narrowed his eyes. Ginny. Percy blushed, and his hands bounced off Penelow's arms as if they were electrocuted. You, why are you here? Using the restroom, you. Cyrus took a step back, turned to look at the sign outside the restroom, and after confirming again that this was the women's restroom, he looked nonchalantly at the two lovers who had no future. Falling in the women's room. I really don't understand you. It's not like Hogwarts doesn't allow love, so why are you doing this secretly? As she said that, she looked at Penelope again. Penelope Crevet. I'm from Ravenclaw. Hello, Ginny. Penelope was no better than Percy. Her face was as red as a dyed one, and when she spoke his lips were trembling. Hello, Miss Crevet. Cyrus also greeted him. He just wanted to keep the two lovers away from the bathroom on the 3rd floor to avoid accidents at the critical moment. Listen to me, Ginny. Percy seemed to have recovered from his nervousness and spoke immediately. Can you please keep it secret? Cyrus asked. The couple nodded immediately. You know, if George and Fred found out, Percy felt horrified just thinking about that scene. They will definitely write a letter to their mother, and then hang countless banners in every corner of the school, saying, congratulations to Percy, the model student, for finding a girlfriend. Or worse. Yes, you can, but I suggest you change a place. Cyrus said, it's yours to hide in the women's bathroom. Don't you know that Ron often comes here? If he knew, then almost the whole school would we all know it. Hearing this, Percy's expression turned a little darker. Thank you, Ginny. Let's go, first. The two men ran away quickly as if they were fleeing. Cyrus also heard Percy complaining to Penelope. I just said it's not safe to choose this place. You'll be discovered the first time you come here. Then find one yourself. Penelope's voice sounded a little annoyed. I just came over and saw Percy and the Ravenclaw prefects. Were you not discovered? Ron rushed into the toilet and immediately looked at Cyrus nervously. I was discovered, but what's so weird about me being in the women's room? Cyrus asked. As long as the compound potion is fine. Hermione pushed open the last compartment of the toilet, and the potion in the cauldron was almost ready. Now we just need to add a little bit of Slytherin student hair. It's best to use Goyle and Clara. Cloth. She turned to look at Harry and Ron. It's true, but what about you? Harry asked. I already have mine, Hermione said happily, taking out a small bottle from her pocket and showing them a piece of hair inside. Remember when Millicent wrestled with me in the dueling club? She left this on my dress while she was choking me. She's gone home for Christmas. All I have to say to the Slytherins is that I've decided to come back. I have some too. Cyrus also took out a few hairs. Okay. Ron and Harry had no choice but to get Goyle and Crabbe's hair. By the way, Ginny, I'll go to the laundry room and steal some clothes. You keep stirring, Hermione said and rushed out. Cyrus had no choice but to continue stirring the crucible. Now black smoke began to rise from the crucible, and the whole thing was smoked. You can't even see inside the cubicle. Fortunately it wasn't smoking when Percy came over, otherwise he would have been discovered. After a while, Hermione returned with several cups and 4 sets of clothes, followed closely by Harry and Ron. Hermione poured the bubbling potion in the cauldron into a cup, and then added Millicent's hair. The potion made a loud noise, like a pot of boiling water, and foamed vigorously. After a second, it turned an ugly yellow color. Oh, the essence of Millicent, said Ron, looking at it with distaste. I suppose it tastes bad. Okay, add yours, Hermione said. Harry put Goyle's hair into the middle cup, and Ron put Crabbe's hair into the last cup. Both glasses sizzled and bubbled. Goyle's turned the color of a tank, Crabbe's a dark brown. Cyrus also put the small handful of white hair in his hand into the potion. In an instant, the potion turned into a color between black and white, but not gray. It looks twisted like this. Cyrus was about to give up drinking the compound potion for a moment. He should have taken a risk and used body transformation. Wait a minute, said Harry, we'd better not all drink here. Once we become Crabbe and Goyle, we won't be able to fit in here. Millicent is not a dainty person either. That makes sense, Ron said, opening the door. Let's each occupy a private room. Cyrus chose a cubicle that was a little off. He originally wanted to simply pour the potion, but in order to achieve a perfect deformation using human body transformation, one must have a considerable understanding of the details of the object being transformed. The other person's height and weight, body proportions, details of facial features. But he was not so impressed by Malfoy. Yes, Cyrus planned to become Malfoy. This was something he had decided before. On the Thursday when he stole the potion, he took a handful of Malfoy's hair. So, he raised his head and drank the compound potion. Surprisingly, it was not unpleasant to drink, but it had a very awkward taste, like sweet and bitter, a little sour and a little spicy at the same time, but no matter what, he had already drank the potion. The compound potion begins to take effect. He felt like something alive was burrowing under his skin, and it was constantly surging. It was like a snake was swimming under his skin, tearing open the connection between his skin and flesh, and eating his flesh. But the pain is fleeting. The next moment, he saw his platinum bangs through his eyes. Chapter 41. After a while, he heard the two brothers Harry and Ron communicating outside. Then, they knocked on the door of the compartment where Cyrus and Hermione were respectively. Hurry up, we have to go. A sharp voice answered him. I really don't want to come out. You can go on your own. Hermione, we know Millicent is ugly, and no one will know it's you. No, really no, I don't think I can come. You two hurry up, you are wasting your time. Harry looked at Ron with a confused expression that looked more like Goyle's. Well, At least we still have Ginny, Malfoy. Ron's final voice was still stuck in his throat, and he saw a figure that almost scared him to death. Why is Draco Malfoy here? Plan exposed. However, Harry soon discovered that the Malfoy in front of him was wearing a Gryffindor school uniform. Are you Ginny? Cyrus nodded. At this moment, Ron also reacted. He looked at Ginny with a ridiculous face. He couldn't believe that Ginny, who had been very reliable since the beginning of school until now, actually fell off the chain. But how can you stand up to it? Questioned Malfoy's face. You're right, that's why I can't go. Cyrus pretended to be helpless with Malfoy's face, which made Harry want to punch him twice. Sorry Ginny, you look really annoying. Thank you, you look stupid too, the time is almost up. The potion prepared by Hermione will not be effective for a long time. You must hurry up. Cyrus rolled his eyes and said immediately. After sending Harry away, Cyrus said, Hermione, wait for me here. I think I can use Malfoy's appearance to go somewhere else to get some information. Okay, go ahead. Hermione wished he would leave quickly. Cyrus had no intention of changing his clothes. With a touch of his wand, his robe turned green. Then, he walked out quickly and headed towards the owl loft without hesitation. I solemnly swear that I will not do bad things. Many traces immediately appeared on the blank parchment. Dumbledore is in the headmaster's office, and the other professors are also in their respective offices. There is someone in the owl shed. Malfoy, why is he in the owl shed? Very good, let's leave. Cyrus was startled, but he found that Malfoy did not stay there for long and left immediately. He immediately cast a disillusionment charm on himself and walked towards the path where Malfoy went downstairs. Malfoy lowered his head and read a letter as he walked. It was probably a gift sent to him by Narcissa or Lucius. Usually these would be sent directly to his dormitory by the house elves, but it might be due to the recent situation in the Malfoy family. More special, Arthur Weasley is trying to deal with them. After reading the letter, he opened another newspaper, and Malfoy's face immediately became happy. Cyrus glanced over and noticed that it was reporting that Ron and Harry had driven to school, for which Arthur Weasley had been punished. Apparently, Lucius was putting a little pressure on this too so that Mr. Weasley didn't have the energy to cause trouble for him. After missing out on Malfoy, Cyrus continued walking upstairs and soon reached the tower. There are very few owls in the tower, almost all of them are public owls raised by the school. Cyrus took out the letter he had prepared in advance, found Draco Malfoy's owl, and released it. The owl did not realize that the man in front of him was not its real owner. Seeing the owl spreading its wings in the snow, Cyrus couldn't help but curl up his lips. Now, it's time to kick Dumbledore out of Hogwarts. Did you find out the secret? Cyrus met Harry and Ron at the door of the bathroom. The two of them had almost completely transformed back. Their large robes made them look very funny. Malfoy is not the heir. So our work was in vain. Fortunately, it's not a complete waste of time, Ron gasped, turning around and closing the bathroom door. I know we still haven't figured out who launched these attacks, but I'm going to write to Dad tomorrow and ask him go and search under the Malfoy living room. Ron knocked hard on the door of Hermione's room. Hermione, come out, we have a lot to tell you. Go away, Hermione piped up. What happened? Ron said, you must have returned to normal now, Weeping Myrtle suddenly appeared from the crack in the door of the single room. He looked very happy, as if he had met some huge happy event. Oh, wait and see, she said, it's terrible. They heard the door lock slide open and Hermione emerged, sobbing, her face covered in black hair, her eyes turned yellow, and two long pointed ears sticking out of her hair. That's a piece of cat hair. She cried miserably, Millicent must have a cat. But this soup is not used to transform animals. What bad luck, said Ron. But the corners of his mouth were raised, as if he had awakened some strange XP. You'll be teased to no end, Myrtle said happily. It's okay, Hermione. Cyrus also felt that Hermione looked very cute like this. There were not many Furies alive, but seeing that Hermione was so sad, he still gave an opinion, we will send you go to the hospital. Madame Pomfrey never asks. It took them a while to persuade Hermione to leave the bathroom. Moaning Myrtle laughed gleefully and loudly, causing them to quicken their pace. Just wait, everyone will find out you have a tail. Don't worry, there are too many precedents like you. It can be cured, as long as you are not handed over to Lockhart. Cyrus said, almost making Ron laugh. After sending Hermione to the school hospital, Cyrus planned to return her body to Ginny first. During this period of intense possession, Ginny's physical condition became a little worse. It would be best to let her go during the Christmas holiday. Get some peace of mind. Cyrus picked a few things to tell Ginny so that she wouldn't reveal them. So, Malfoy is not the heir, and our clues are broken again. Ginny summarized the progress of Mr. Riddle during this period. It can be said that her work was almost in vain. It's not all in vain. At least Ron discovered some flaws in the Malfoy family, and I discovered that your brother Percy was in love with the prefect of Ravenclaw in the girls' bathroom. Okay, don't worry, I believe things will get better. Ginny comforted her. However, the accident still happened. When the Christmas holiday was over, Cyrus suddenly found that he could no longer contact Ginny. The person who opened the diary became a different person. Is this what my father said, the thing that can help me open the secret room? Draco picked up the diary and read it from different angles, but didn't find anything strange about it. And this diary looks like something from the Muggle world. This made Draco Malfoy feel a little disgusted, and he even felt that he could no longer keep the two fingers holding the corner of the book. However, in order to become the heir of Slytherin, Malfoy was still determined to endure this dirty and stench, but in the end he didn't even know how to use a diary. Reveal quickly. The diary has not changed at all. What the hell? Dad asked me to be more respectful to the owner of the diary. He opened the cover and looked at the only word on the cover with disdain, Riddle. As soon as he heard it, he knew he was not a pure-blood wizard. I just hope he's at least a half-blood. If it's another mudblood then I can't stand it. The thought of Hermione Granger made him sick. Let's write something. He spread the diary on the table, picked up a very expensive-looking quill, dipped some ink, and wrote in the diary. Show me your secret. Ginny, what secret do you have? The four Weasley brothers surrounded Ginny, and Harry and Hermione also blocked Ginny's retreat. After classes ended this morning, someone discovered that Ginny's dormitory had been stolen. The thief was probably looking for something, and turned her room into a mess. After Ginny came back, she kept rummaging through the mess, repeating in despair, "It's gone." They all wanted to know what it was that Ginny and the thief valued so much. Except the twins. The two of them were very nervous now. What was important to Ginny? The Marauder's map. Fred and George looked at each other with unpleasant expressions on their faces. Fred asked heartbrokenly, "Is it really lost?" Ginny just nodded mechanically. What on earth? Ron and Percy were a little annoyed by their riddle. But obviously, neither Ginny nor the Geminis could tell their own secrets. So I can only speak vaguely. It's the whole hope of catching the murderer. George sighed and said, without it, maybe we really can't find the murderer. This actually made Ginny look at the two of them strangely. Do George and Fred know about Mr. Riddle? Single quote. Cyrus had never told Ginny about the Marauder's map. At this time, Ginny thought the twins were talking about Riddle's diary. In her opinion, Mr. Riddle must have some clues, so it was stolen by the heir of Slytherin. From this perspective, it is very reasonable to describe the diary as the hope of catching the murderer. In this case, we should tell the professors about this. Hermione and Percy both agreed that the professors should catch the thief. But this proposal was immediately opposed by three people. No, Ginny, Fred, and George immediately shook their heads. If the Marauder's map falls into the hands of professors, will those students who attempt to violate discipline have a future? If the diary falls into the hands of the professors, will there be a future for me and Mr. Riddle? Absolutely not. What are you three hiding from me? Percy frowned. He suspected that the twins were messing around with Ginny. Maybe what was stolen was not something important at all, but something they planned to use as a prank. Props. I advise you not to lead Ginny astray, otherwise I will tell Mother. No, Ginny's reaction was even bigger than that of the twins. Her mother always felt very sorry for her. If her mother found out about this, there would definitely be a big fuss. In that case, Mr. Riddle will. Percy must be stopped. She remembered what Cyrus told her about Percy's little secret, so she immediately threatened. You can't tell anyone, Percy, or I'll spill your secret. Percy immediately blushed and fell silent. The rest of the people looked at each other, eager to know what the secret was, which made Percy, who had always been rigid, give in. In this regard, Percy could only use his brother's dignity and drive them away one by one. Now, Ginny's side is peaceful. But she was still unhappy. She was hesitating whether to tell Dumbledore about the diary. Although if his mother found out, the diary might be destroyed. But falling into the wrong hands is also not a good thing. Not long after, Ron and 3 others sneaked around again. Listen to me, Ginny, what exactly are you missing? Harry looked at her seriously. If this is really important, you can tell us and we can help you. Ron and Hermione also nodded vigorously. But Ginny still hesitated to speak. Isn't it? Ron was a little impatient. I can't believe it, Ginny. We can say that we share weal and woe. Who drank such a nasty compound potion to investigate Malfoy? We broke almost several laws together. Hundreds of school rules. Don't you still believe us? Ginny wanted to say that the person acting with them was actually Mr. Riddle, but from another perspective, at least the 3 of them were indeed trustworthy. Please, Ginny, we need your help. If we can't find the real murderer, Harry will always be wronged, and we don't want to see him enter Azkaban unjustly. With 3 pairs of eyes watching her, mainly Hermione and Harry, Ginny finally made up her mind. Hermione has a very smart mind and may really be able to help. If she had to find the diary by herself, there would be no way to start. You must promise not to tell anyone. Ginny looked at them seriously. I promise. Ron was the first to blurt out, without seeming to be sincere at all. Swear first. The 3 little ones just looked at each other and made an oath, but it was not bound by magic. Go to a place where no one is around first, Ginny said. In fact, there is no one in the common room now, but this place is too public. She took Harry and others to an abandoned secret room, and the 3 little animals were stunned along the way. Hogwarts actually has a place like this. You can finally say it now, right? Ron put his hands on his hips. The stolen thing was a diary. Ginny finally said. Diary? But what about a diary? Harry and Hermione were both very puzzled. That diary is different, it's Mr. Riddle's diary. Riddle, Ron shouted, Tom Riddle. Wait, stop, wait a minute. Harry looked at Ron suspiciously, as if he was asking when the other person met another man behind his back, so you know this Tom Riddle? I should know. It's better to say that I will never forget this name until I die. Ron felt annoyed when he thought about it. New. Remember when we fought with Slytherin on the Quidditch pitch? That's when I cast a hex on Malfoy. To yourself, Hermione interrupted. It does not matter. Then please tell me what's important. I was about to say that. Ron said, then Professor McGonagall sent me to work for Filch, and then I spent the whole night in the metal room polishing Tom Riddle's trophy. Moral Award, Outstanding Student Award, Special Contribution Award, especially this Special Contribution Award, it is a very big piece and I spent more than half an hour erasing it. Fortunately, the reason for the award was not written on it, otherwise I probably wouldn't have finished erasing it by now. Harry and Hermione were still surprised at the coincidence, and Ginny said something else that surprised them. Mr. Riddle won the award because he caught the last person who opened the secret room 50 years ago. What? The 3 people immediately stood up and looked at Ginny with wide eyes. They had never felt that they were so close to the truth at any time. Who is it? In the small secret room, the 3 breathing sounds suddenly became rapid. However, Ginny shook her head. Mr. Riddle didn't tell me. Hearing this, the 3 of them sat back on the dusty floor in frustration, but at this time, Harry caught the blind spot. I didn't tell you. What do you mean I didn't tell you? Because the diary has thoughts. Mr. Riddle put his memories in the diary. I have been communicating with him last semester. Later, after the secret room was opened again, he said that he would find it again murderer. Now the diary has been stolen. Mr. Riddle must have discovered something, so he was targeted by the heir. Ginny started crying as she spoke. Hermione thought that she had been surprised by enough things today, and no matter what she heard, she would not be more surprised. But now she knows she was wrong. Ron's face was full of fear and fear. You, how dare you talk to a thinking thing? What if it curses you? Mr. Riddle doesn't do that, Ginny said angrily. She knew that others might not be willing to accept it after hearing about the diary. Mr. Riddle will not hurt me, he is my friend. He has helped me a lot, taught me spells, guided me in transformation and potions, and various ways to undo spells. If it weren't for Mr. Riddle, what are you saying now? Maybe he's still spitting out slugs. Ron was immediately ashamed. Now, all three of them knew why Ginny was so good. But, he is thoughtful. If it were me, I would never believe it easily. Ron was still wary. Then tell me, do I look like I'm in danger? If Mr. Riddle wanted to harm me, he would have succeeded long ago. But he didn't. He even helped me with my homework. What? Ron and Hermione screamed at the same time, even with the same open-mouthed expression. He actually helped you with your homework. This is so crazy. This Riddle must not be a good person. How could he do this? This is Hermione. This is so crazy. He must be a good guy. Why wasn't I the one who got this notebook? This was Ron. Hermione kicked him hard. Now, Harry was very clear about this. But who stole the diary? It must be someone else from Gryffindor House. And it's a girl, Ron said without hesitation, otherwise no one can enter the girls' dormitory. That's not necessarily true. Don't forget that you went to the Slytherin common room a few weeks ago. Hermione reminded them not to forget the compound potion. But in this way, the number of objects to suspect has greatly increased. Could it be Malfoy? But Malfoy is not the heir of Slytherin. Several people suddenly fell into a deadlock again. Harry felt very painful, like a fruit that was about to ripen but disappeared. Cyrus felt in agony, like a fruit that was about to ripen but then disappeared. It took him so long to make Ginny Weasley completely trust him and gain a short period of freedom. As a result, now, the diary has fallen into the hands of another person. And he didn't even know who the person in front of him was. Could it be Dumbledore? Did he change his mind about training Harry and plan to destroy me directly? Just as he was struggling, a piece of text finally emerged. Show me your secret. Show the secret of your size. Cyrus just wants Bang Bang to punch him twice. You'd better not let me know who you are, or you'll be dead. Of course, these were just angry words. No matter what, in order to be resurrected, he still had to be patient and bewitch the little wizard in front of him. First, we still need to confirm his identity. Who are you? On the other side, Malfoy immediately smiled when he saw the diary's response. Unexpectedly, I just wrote a secret word casually, and the secret of this diary was actually revealed. Am I really a genius? After a brief moment of self-indulgence, Malfoy immediately continued writing in his diary. My name is Draco Malfoy. My father told me that this diary can help me open the Chamber of Secrets. Is your master the last person to open the Chamber of Secrets? Tell me, where is he? I want him serve me. Draco had forgotten Lucius's warning. He will soon be the heir of Slytherin, why did he need to grovel? Draco Malfoy. And it was Lucius who asked him to do this. Cyrus was stunned. Lucius, you big-browed man, it turns out you have betrayed the revolution too. Cyrus felt a little suffocated at the thought of being stabbed in the back after writing a letter to Lucius Malfoy on his front foot. Of course, he naturally believed that Lucius did not dare to openly betray Voldemort. At least at this stage, Lucius was still on the opposite side of Dumbledore. He must have misunderstood the letter I wrote in the past. So, it's me who shot myself in the foot. Forget it, it's the same if it's Malfoy, but you have to gain his trust quickly. Gaining Draco's trust was easier than imagined, and Cyrus knew that it was probably thanks to Lucius. The new dragon still admires his father very much. Since it was Lucius who told him that this diary could help him open the secret room, Draco naturally believed it. In the process of communicating with Draco, Cyrus finally understood the cause and effect. At that time, Cyrus turned into Draco and found the owl of the Malfoy family. The owl did not recognize that the Malfoy in front of him was not Malfoy, so it flew to the Malfoy manor in Wiltshire with the letter. He was afraid that Lucius Malfoy would disobey his orders, so when he wrote the letter, he clearly hinted that Draco's fate was in his own hands and asked Lucius to cooperate with him to bring Dumbledore to justice. Leto was kicked out of school. As a result, when Lucius and Narcissa received the letter from their son, they immediately panicked, caused a misunderstanding. Time goes back to the days of Christmas. Wiltshire, Malfoy Manor. It's already Christmas, they should finally calm down. Narcissa's face was full of displeasure. This temperament destroyed her original beauty, and she looked like a person who was not so easy to contact. But she couldn't blame her. The Ministry of Magic had been causing trouble for them this year, trying to find out the dark magic items hidden in the Malfoy family. Although Lucius has secretly dealt with the most difficult batch, the Malfoy family has not been a good gentleman in the wizarding world for so many years. Unless the entire manor is turned into an empty shell, there is no way to finish the deal. And his beloved son, it was because of the continuous searches that Lucius decided to let Draco spend Christmas at school this year. Narcissa was naturally unhappy that she couldn't see her great son after a hard-fought vacation. I've put pressure on the Daily Prophet and the Ministry of Magic. Fortunately, Arthur Weasley has a stupid son, and that Harry Potter. Naturally, Lucius would not take advantage of Weasley's attack. Arthur Weasley, right, if you cause trouble for me, I won't make it easy for you. In fact, he started doing it during the summer vacation. He remembered a diary that Voldemort had given him for safekeeping. That diary looked like something from the Muggle world. If it hadn't been left by that person and asked him to keep it, he would have thrown it away as trash. Lucius remembered that he seemed to have asked the Dark Lord back then why he was allowed to keep a notebook from the Muggle world. The answer given by the Dark Lord at that time was, the diary is the key to the secret room. If the Dark Lord was still alive, Lucius would never dare to hand over the diary, but now, he has disappeared for 11 years. In this case, why not use this diary to cause a little trouble for the Weasley family? After that, he did not let go of the flying car incident. Not only did he contact the newspaper to make the matter bigger, he also paid to bribe some officials in the Ministry of Magic who were close to him, causing Arthur Weasley to fall into trouble. Middle. Now, the annoying endless search is finally over. Let me see, do you want to go to Hogwarts and bring Draco back? Narcissa said a little worriedly. Last time Draco wrote back, he already said that there was an attack in the school. I'm afraid the secret room has really been opened, and I am worried that he will be in danger if he stays in the school. Lucius pondered for a moment, then shook his head. The one who was attacked was just a mudblood. Draco will not be in danger. And I have written to him not to show his face. He knows very little about this matter, it won't be a problem. It's not impossible to go all the way to bring Draco home, but Draco will also be the one to succeed the Malfoy family in the future, so he shouldn't be so pretentious. As the two of them were talking, they saw a flying shadow in the sky. It was the owl they bought for Draco. Didn't Draco send a letter a few days ago? Narcissa eagerly took the letter from the owl and opened it. After a few seconds, her already pale face immediately became even paler. She covered her mouth in fear, her whole body seemed to be shaky. What's the matter? Lucius suddenly had a bad premonition, and quickly took the letter and checked it. My dear servant, Lucius Malfoy. I'm really sorry, Lucius. Did I disappear from other people's eyes for a while and you forget about my magic power? Otherwise, how dare you give away the things I asked you to keep? I think you probably think that the Dark Lord is dead, defeated by a baby who can't even walk, as countless people said, so you are eager to clear up the relationship, right? Lucius only read the first paragraph, his breathing became short, his whole body couldn't stop shaking, and he slowly said, he's back. He's back. Then he looked on with fear. I have to admit that my current state is indeed not good, but it is still easy to kill a few people. Now, I need you to complete one thing to make up for the mistakes you made. Not too hard, just kick Dumbledore out of school. Also, wish you a Merry Christmas. There were only a few words in the letter, but it made Lucius and Narcissa look pale. Is it really him? It can't be him, Narcissa said in fear. He has disappeared for 11 years, how could he come back again? She was unwilling to accept the fact that her son was in danger at this moment. But Lucius knew very well that no one except Voldemort himself knew about the diary. There is still a chance to atone for one's sins. He immediately came out of his fear. Lucius understood Voldemort's character. If he did his task well enough, it would be possible to avoid punishment, and Draco would not be in danger. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. If Dumbledore can't find the murderer, then I can use the power of the school director to drive him out of Hogwarts. Lucius already had a plan in mind, but he still needed to convince the school director. Some chips. The number of victims must be increased. How can only one mudblood be enough? Draco must do this. The Dark Lord is not dead yet. Only in this way will he praise Draco. More than, I'm here, Master. A house elf with scars all over his body appeared in front of Lucius. He looked at Lucius Malfoy with fearful and tentative eyes. Lucius was too lazy to pay attention to why it had so many scars. Now, there was only one thing he wanted to do, and that was to complete the Dark Lord's mission and prevent Draco from encountering danger. Dobby, I want you to go to Hogwarts, find Ginny Weasley, steal a black diary and give it to Draco. Then, give him this letter. Lucius wrote another letter. Can you really let me open the Chamber of Secrets? Malfoy's eyes were shining. His heart was as excited as exploding fireworks, the heir of Slytherin. This is simply an incredible honor. In Britain, all, or almost all pure-blood wizards admire Slytherin very much. This great wizard who eventually parted ways with the other three giants is their real idol. If he could inherit Slytherin's secrets, couldn't he become the second great wizard? At that time, just like his father said, Hogwarts must be purified. Those filthy mudbloods should be eliminated. Colin Creevey and Justin are just the beginning. Draco Malfoy, he is the one who will inherit Slytherin's legacy. Etc. The fire in Malfoy's heart suddenly stagnated, and he suddenly thought, since he only got the diary now, who was the last person to have the diary? He was not referring to the successor 50 years ago, but the person who caused the two mudbloods to be petrified not long ago. He immediately asked Cyrus. Cyrus didn't want to tell Malfoy about Ginny, so he just replied, just a pathetic coward. Just because the professors became wary, he immediately started to be afraid. Otherwise, your father wouldn't be either. I will ask you to cooperate with me. Hearing this, Malfoy immediately felt that it made sense. You mean, my father thinks I am more reliable? He wrote excitedly, of course, I am Malfoy. It was easier than Ginny to deal with such a silly boy who was full of pretentiousness. Cyrus gave a slight hint and made Malfoy confused. Okay, let's take action immediately. Malfoy naturally did not want to be a coward, and he couldn't wait to see Hermione Granger become the next victim. No, Cyrus rejected him without hesitation. Now is not a good time, and I know you are not a coward, Draco. But it would be terrible if they were discovered. We need to get them to let down their guard first. However, I can take you to the secret room to take a look first. Draco was disappointed a second ago, but after seeing that he could go to the secret room, he immediately became excited again. I can't wait to appear in the center of the secret room in the next second and see that terrifying monster. How to get to? I need to use your body. Cyrus came up with a plan. What, do you think I will let you possess me? Malfoy immediately screamed. He knows the horror of dark magic items better than anyone else. If you let such a thing possess you, who knows what will happen? You do not dare. Do you think I will harm you? Do you think your father would send something to you that might threaten your safety? Cyrus asked 3 consecutive questions, shattering all the doubts in Draco's heart. Okay, what to do? You don't have to do anything, you just put your face close to the diary. Draco immediately moved his face slowly towards the diary, and a silver haze began to appear in his vision, like mist-like threads spurted out by some kind of insect. The thread clung to his face, leading him into a dark abyss before he could react. When he raised his head again, the consciousness of this body already belonged to Cyrus. Finally, Cyrus first greedily absorbed a little bit of Draco's life, and then planned to take Draco to the secret room for a look as agreed. Although he had gained Draco's trust, the level of trust was still much lower than that of Ginny. Ginny's trust in herself was so deep that she would make excuses for herself when problems arose. But the trust between Cyrus and Draco was easily broken. Under such circumstances, even possession cannot last very long. He still needed to gain Draco's trust further. But before that, he still needed to get something, the Marauder's map. After getting the Marauder's map from Fred and George, Cyrus hid it. At that time, he felt that the less people knew about the Marauder's map, the more useful it would be, so he did not tell anyone about the Marauder's map. Ginny, I didn't expect it to work now. After getting the Marauder's map, Cyrus folded it and hid it in Draco's sleeve. Then he turned and walked towards the bathroom on the 3rd floor. The sink in the bathroom was opened at his command, and there was endless darkness in the secret passage. Draco Malfoy felt himself slowly opening his eyes in the darkness, and finally a little light shone in. Although it is weak, I can see things at least. Then, the physical sensation slowly returned. He felt like he was lying in sticky mud, which made him feel very uncomfortable. But soon the fear of being in a completely unfamiliar place made him forget this little discomfort. There is a very high dome above the head, and it can be seen that this is a very huge space. The sides are carved with lifelike stone statues of snakes, each with a terrifying head rising from the black water. The secret room. The answer immediately popped into Draco's head. He quickly sat up from the ground, causing the diary that was originally flat on his chest to fall to the ground. Draco quickly picked up the diary. The pages of the book were turned. "This is the secret room." Written on the page was this sentence: "The secret room is inside the book." Single quote. Draco thought subconsciously. He thought that when he got close to the diary, he was pulled into the diary, so that he could reach the secret room. No wonder Dad said this diary is the key to the secret room. Single quote. Now, the fear is gone. Draco perked up. He quickly stood up and looked at everything in the secret room. It was very empty, with almost nothing, but he felt like he was the real owner of this secret room. Where's the monster? What about the monster Slytherin raised that could destroy mudbloods? He couldn't wait to write in his diary. You can't summon that monster. You must have Parseltongue to summon it. Otherwise you will be attacked. Cyrus will not be led by Malfoy. Just show him the secret room, it's not time to let him push further. Parseltongue. Harry Potter is a Parseltongue. Was it him before? Malfoy asked in disbelief. He didn't want to believe that the St. Potter would be the successor of Slytherin. Of course not him. Who else but him? Who knows Parseltongue? Malfoy asked immediately. After a moment, he saw 2 letters appear on the diary. Me. Are you a Parseltongue? Malfoy's surprised tone was laced with jealousy. The name Tom Riddle sounds like a boring mudblood, at best a half-blood. However, such a person actually possesses the ability he dreams of most. But soon, he was shocked by what Cyrus said next. Weird, my mother's surname is Gaunt, and I am a descendant of Slytherin. Who would have thought that this little Tom, who is unknown in the magical world, is actually a descendant of Slytherin? No wonder he can open the secret room. Draco was still annoyed though. Why didn't his ancestors have a wizard as great as Slytherin? In this way, I can also be a powerful heir to Hogwarts as a Malfoy heir. But forget it, anyway, now the heir of the secret room has become himself, no matter what. The only thing that dissatisfied him was that this abominable Tom Riddle, even though he was a Parseltongue, didn't summon the monster for himself to see. He really had no vision at all. Shouting, since you have Parseltongue, shouldn't you show it? Cyrus. Little soup. This Draco Malfoy really doesn't know how to write the word death. Fortunately, the person in the diary is not really Riddle, otherwise he would be resurrected. No, there would be no need to resurrect him, and Malfoy's life force would be drained directly. Of course I am willing, but the problem is that if I use Parselmouth, I have to borrow your body to make the sound. In this way, you will never see the appearance of the basilisk. Basilisk. It turns out that the monster in the Chamber of Secrets is a basilisk. Malfoy was surprised at first, and then nodded as if it was a matter of course. The monster left behind by Slytherin should of course be the strongest Snake King. But, according to what Tom Riddle said, wouldn't he never be able to see the basilisk and never be able to control it? What kind of successor is this? At most, it can only be regarded as Shoutang's vocal organ. Can't you summon it first and then return the body to me? If you have the courage and strength to face the basilisk alone, then I don't mind at all. But I need to remind you that without my control, it will attack you immediately. Please forgive me, after all, it has not been around for almost 1,000 years. Why has it eaten? The rats in the sewer can't satisfy its appetite. Malfoy immediately shuddered. Then forget it. He sighed and looked around. There seemed to be nothing in the huge secret room except for a few statues. Is this Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets? It's a bit disappointing to be honest. In fact, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets cannot only contain these. Although the Chamber of Secrets was originally just a classroom built by Slytherin, it also left behind many precious manuscripts and secrets. Most of these have been absorbed by Voldemort and become nutrients to strengthen him. Now, they also belong to Cyrus, power. And there are many records of dangerous magical experiments. Some succeeded, but many more failed. Slytherin is said to be as ugly as a monkey. In fact, this is not his original appearance, just like Voldemort was also a handsome young man at the beginning. Both of them underwent magical experiments to transform themselves in pursuit of greater magical power. It can be said that Voldemort's experiment was largely based on Slytherin's experiment, but it still did not escape the disfigurement ending. Cyrus, who has absorbed the experience of these two, is actually very enthusiastic about the transformation of magic blood, but he doesn't want to turn into an ugly monster yet, so he must be very careful in this step. It's too early to consider these things now. If I don't resurrect, I won't even have the capital to carry out transformation. Single quote. Sighing slightly, Cyrus knew that now was the time to make Draco trust him more. Are you thinking, what other secrets are there in this secret room? How do you know? Malfoy was startled by Cyrus's words. Could it be that this diary can also use legilimency? It's not hard to guess. If you want to become stronger, I have a good place to go. All you need is to lean your head over like you did at the beginning. Cyrus replied, and then turned the diary to another page. With his first experience, Malfoy was already familiar with the situation this time. After another shift in consciousness, Cyrus took out the Marauder's map and confirmed that there was no one outside the secret room and the corridor on the 8th floor before leaving and heading to the room of requirement. Give me a room to practice dark magic. Opening the door, an eerie classroom appeared in front of Cyrus. The classroom was almost filled with books on black magic. There are some very advanced black magic among them. He hid most of the grimoires, leaving only a few simple hexes. There are actually quite a lot of these little evil curses for young wizards, so they won't affect their character too much, and at the same time they can keep Malfoy away, which is very suitable. Then, he returned his body again. Malfoy was naturally very happy when he saw so many jinxes, and he did not hesitate to praise Cyrus. Cyrus continued to return to the diary and analyze those alchemy books and other forbidden books. Although he is now in Malfoy's hands, the actual situation has not changed much. The possibility of finally facing Dumbledore still exists. The 22 paths through the Tree of Life led to the world of the archetype at the top. The devil waters him with sin, and the skeleton cuts him in pieces. The 10 sources of matter composed of the heavenly layer where the 7 major planets are located, as well as the stellar heaven, heavenly mansion, and sublunar world, are the basic forces of God and the world. Threaded through are the feminine pillar of compassion, the neutral pillar of gentleness, and the masculine pillar of severity. The creation and mentality of the perfect spirit, thoughts and concepts will begin to take shape in material form, and finally reach the material world. Cyrus felt that the more he read these alchemy books, the more he felt like he was immersed in an extremely terrifying quagmire. The vast world and boundless power are more mysterious than magic. Close to going to the true roots. Can the real philosopher's stone be refined only after completing the 22 paths? Or is it to gain more perfect, essential power? Cyrus's ambitions began to grow. What if it's just resurrection? The body after his resurrection is that of Tom Riddle. Although he is very talented, he still has limits after all. He made himself appear to be neither a human nor a ghost, but in the end he failed to obtain the ultimate power. Sellers didn't want to settle for less. Now that he has been exposed to so many mysteries, what he longs for is to become a truly perfect life. For a long time, Malfoy was immersed in the joy of learning curses. Cyrus didn't give him much guidance, but he still learned quickly. In addition to curses, Malfoy is also very interested in some alchemical gadgets. But this was something Lucius didn't want him to have access to when he was at home. Being addicted to alchemy tools is equivalent to playing with things and losing one's ambition. But in fact, Malfoy is quite talented in this area. After Cyrus discovered this by chance, he immediately took advantage and began to teach Malfoy about alchemy. Sometimes he would go to the hiding room to find some damaged alchemical items for Draco to repair. A broken pensive was even found among them. As a result, they finally have a common secret. Malfoy also became more trusting of Cyrus. If you want to continue studying alchemy, I suggest you choose runes in your 3rd year. Sellers suggested. Different from the ancient alchemy he is currently studying, modern alchemy is more focused on refining magic props, and is better at using runes to add magical power to props. The school hasn't mentioned course selection yet, but Malfoy is indeed considering it seriously. Ever since the diary was stolen from Ginny, Dobby has been in a state of distress and confusion. He thought of so many ways to inform Harry Potter, but he never thought that the person whose name could not be mentioned was actually still alive. Narrowly escaped death from Harry Potter 11 years ago. Now, I'm afraid Harry Potter will face an even more terrifying threat. The man who must not even be named is still alive. Harry Potter must leave Hogwarts. Dobby clenched his fist hard. At Hogwarts, Harry and others are still trying their best to help Ginny find Riddle's diary. But it has been several weeks and there is still no results at all. They looked at almost everyone as a murderer, and almost every Slytherin and Gryffindor student became a suspect. Ginny was very devastated, but as time passed, she became sad and gave up. I'm afraid we'll never be able to find that diary. Ron, like a pig, began to talk in frustration, and have you noticed? The attacks seem to have stopped. It must have happened somewhere we don't know. Something happened. Maybe Riddle used his method to stop the successor. His words almost imply that the brave and righteous Mr. Riddle has died on the road to stop evil. So Ginny immediately started crying after hearing this. Not only did she cry, but she also hung Ron from the ceiling with an upside-down golden hook. Ron, in contrast, Fred and George, who thought Ginny had lost the map, were less anxious. On the one hand, they have figured out almost all the tunnels in the map, and at the same time, they also think that it is impossible for the successor to know the secrets of the map. The other party can never use the map to harm others. Even if they get it, it is just a piece of waste paper. Now that the attacks have stopped, this is the best proof. So not only were they not worried, but they would come to comfort Ginny from time to time, but their comfort method was somewhat different. At least Percy didn't think of dressing up in fur or turning into boils, jumping out from behind the statue to tease her. Such behavior can be considered a kind of comfort. Soon, Harry had to stop looking for the thief. Because Wood has been training them like crazy recently, Harry stayed on the court almost all the time after dinner. The weather was still very cold and raining, which caused him to return every time. I feel like a drowned rat when I go to the dormitory. Ron was also very tired and always fell asleep. Worse than all of them was Lockhart. In order to ease the tension in the school, he organized a Valentine's Day event on his own initiative. Those little cupids, with greeting cards, actually ugly dwarfs, would read out love letters written to you by others in public. The only thing that made Harry happy was that at least he didn't receive anything that might embarrass him. But Ron was very angry because Hermione could never unite with him in her attitude towards Lockhart. He suspected that one of the 40 or so Valentine's Day cards Lockhart had received belonged to Hermione. That Gilderoy Lockhart, I've never seen a worse man. Even Malfoy had almost had enough of Lockhart. My dad was really right. Dumbledore has completely suffered from Alzheimer's disease. Look at the defense against the dark arts professor he has been looking for in the past 2 years. He is getting worse every year. Last year, he just stuttered. What about this year? He should go to a drama club and become a ridiculous actor. If there was anything about Lockhart that made him happy, it was the fact that he always invited Harry Potter to perform with him in class. Almost every time, the annoying Scarhead plays a funny role, which can indeed add a lot of laughter to himself. But watching the same drama too much will make people feel boring. This time, there is another Valentine's Day drama. Draco Malfoy, who doesn't know how popular Slytherin is. Are there fewer people who want to express their feelings to me? But if someone confesses his love on this occasion, he would rather die. If someone dares to write me a greeting card and make me look embarrassed, I will teach her a lesson. Draco said immediately. This made Pansy, who was sitting not far from him, immediately give up the idea. At noon, Malfoy complained to Cyrus about this matter again. He has almost regarded Cyrus as a real friend. He takes a bite of soup and calls him very kindly. Sometimes Cyrus would remind him, I'm older than your father, and even he has to respect me. How can you call me shouting? Draco always looked unconcerned. We all talk about our own affairs. He calls you uncle and I call you brother. Draco did not hesitate to give himself a super plus. But if Lucius knew that he called Voldemort Tang, sooner or later he would kneel in front of Draco and call him daddy. Cyrus didn't care about this. It was enough for him to be Draco's close friend. I think this might not be a bad thing, Sellers said deliberately. You should take advantage of this opportunity. What's the meaning? I mean, if you think this is a shameful thing, what about others? It seems to me that you hate that Harry Potter. Then why don't you try writing him a greeting card without a name? How about, his eyes were as green as freshly pickled toads. Look at how big celebrities are embarrassed in public. Cyrus had absolutely no memory of a brief period when he and Harry collaborated to steal potions, and the deception was unambiguous at all. You are simply a genius. Malfoy jumped up. Right, must write, just write as you say. To be honest, I have long hated his eyes. And he had a new idea. And have the dwarfs read it out in potions class, he said proudly. But Cyrus slowly raised a question mark. You probably don't know that Dean Snape hates Harry Potter the most. Malfoy thought that Cyrus didn't understand the twists and turns, and immediately explained to him excitedly, if the dean's class as if he is interrupted, it is easy to imagine that Potter will be dead. In front of Snape, Harry's eyes were as green as freshly pickled toads. It's really you, Draco Malfoy. It's not certain who will die. Don't you know that Snape hated every pore of Harry's body, except his eyes? Give you a dirty word like mudblood, and you can clean the toilets for a semester. Give you a Valentine's Day and you can step on thunder accurately. Even the American five-star wizard MacArthur said, when it comes to seeking death, even I can't compare to Draco Malfoy. When Malfoy started to seek death, it was already too late. If God asked me to compare myself to death with Malfoy, then I would kill God without hesitation. The large-scale documentary, The Legend of Draco Malfoy, continues to be broadcast for you. During Charms class in the afternoon, Malfoy implemented this plan. He also wanted to give Harry a try in potions class, but unfortunately the last potions class this week was yesterday. Throughout the class, Malfoy waited for the show. The black diary was placed in the upper left corner of the table. We will continue to learn the freezing spell today. Flitwick stood on the first base of books, otherwise his head would not be as high as the podium. But he was very enthusiastic. The spell of the freezing curse is immobilis. Pay attention to distinguish it from the other spell Glacius. Of course you haven't learned it yet. Normally speaking, the freezing spell can only work on moving things, but... Hey, you, Harry Potter. A dwarf with a particularly gloomy face burst into the classroom and interrupted Professor Flitwick's lesson. The whole class raised their heads and looked at the dwarf who was about the same height as Professor Flitwick, and Harry immediately realized that he was going to be doomed. It was so irritating to receive a Valentine's Day card in front of so many people, especially Draco Malfoy among them. Harry wanted to run away. But I'm still in class now. And several dwarfs had already gathered around him, crowding his table. Even Ron and Neville were squeezed out. His gaze was cast out as if asking for help. Harry saw a look of fear and worry on Ron's face. Professor Flitwick on the podium covered his face helplessly, as if he was wondering why a being like Lockhart was a human being. Winklaw student. Across from him, the annoying Malfoy smiled happier than ever. I have a message to deliver to Harry Potter myself, the dwarf said, strumming the harp in an aggressive manner. Not here, Harry said in a low voice, almost begging. Stop, the dwarf muttered, grabbing Harry's bag to prevent him from escaping. Let me go, Harry shouted, tugging at his bag. He no longer cares whether he is in class or not, he would rather die. With a loud tearing sound, his school bag was torn in half. His book, wand, parchment, and quill clattered to the floor, his inkstand shattering on top. Harry scrambled for things scattered on the ground, trying to pick them up before the dwarf started singing. The class was already in chaos, but Malfoy's voice pierced through the noise like a sharp bayonet, slashing at Harry. What's going on? Malfoy said in a cold and contemptuous tone. But he was much more excited inside than he let on. He has been waiting for this moment for a long time. He's laughing at me. Harry was completely panicked and just wanted to escape quickly, but the dwarf hugged his knees and made him fall heavily to the ground. There you go, he said, slumping down on Harry's lap, here's your singing Valentine's Day. His eyes were as green as freshly pickled toads. His hair is as black and cool as a blackboard. The scar on his head is as magical as lightning. I wish he were mine, he's really handsome. He's Harry Scarhead. All right, Professor Flitwick finally couldn't stand it anymore. It was probably the first time that the students had seen the gentle Professor Flitwick so angry. I'm still in class. He picked up the wand and shot a magic spell. It did not hit the dwarf directly, but hit it at its feet, leaving a hole as big as a fist on the ground, and drove the dwarf away. But Harry didn't feel any better at all. He was willing to hand over all the gold coins and gringotts, just to turn into vapor and disappear on the spot. He bravely forced himself to laugh with everyone, but the one who laughed the most in the whole class was Malfoy. Laughing with Malfoy was even more torture for him. The most important is, this is not a confession at all, it's definitely Malfoy's fault. Harry swore, only he would call me Scarhead. What you said makes sense. Ron nodded, with regret on his face. How shameful, why didn't we think of such a good trick to tease Malfoy? Harry also felt it was a pity, but it was too late to say anything now. Potions class was their last class today and this week. After class, Malfoy would return to the Slytherin common room. But Harry was still unwilling to give in. He was no longer interested in listening to the lecture, and looked at Malfoy with eyes full of hatred under his round lenses. Then, he saw Malfoy lying on the table as if he had encountered something good, and took out a black notebook and started writing. But the distance between the two of them was too far, and Harry couldn't see the specific content of Malfoy's writing. I don't think Potter liked your Valentine's Day too much. This line of writing seeped into the diary and appeared in front of Cyrus. My gift to Harry Potter. Cyrus rolled his eyes. Who loves Harry Potter the most? He responded immediately. It's not me, it's you. I guess his expression must be wonderful. Completely correct. Through the words, Cyrus could feel Malfoy's extremely happy mood at this time. I'm afraid there's never a better moment in the world for him than right now. However, what Cyrus didn't know was that Harry was watching every move of the careless Malfoy. Fortunately, black books like this are all too common. So much so that even after Harry heard Ginny's description, he didn't have any doubts. After all, they had ruled out the option of Malfoy being a thief before. But in the final analysis, Malfoy can only make small fuss like this. The malice in his chest seems to be greater than anyone else's, but when put into practice, it may not be as powerful as he said. Are we really going to kill someone? In the secret room, Malfoy's voice began to tremble. In front of him was a tall humanoid figure, handsome, but his figure was still a little transparent, like a ghost. It's Cyrus. By absorbing the life force of Ginny and Malfoy some time ago, he was able to briefly let his shadow leave the diary. The abundant life simply gave him a new life. However, this would actually consume a lot of his energy. But friends always have to face each other. This is also a small preparation that Cyrus made to completely control Malfoy. I think we don't need to. Are you scared? Are you scared like the last coward? He asked. I'm not afraid, it's just. Draco's chest heaved violently. He looked at the big snake bowing in front of him in horror. What he felt at this moment was not glory, but real fear. But facing Cyrus, or in other words, facing Little Soup, who had been with him for a long time, he was unwilling to show his unbearable side. Especially when he discovered that the half-blood, Tom Riddle, was simply much better than himself. Now, he really wants to show off himself in front of his friends and his father, so that they know how outstanding he is, but asking him to kill someone is a bit. She's just a dirty little mudblood, why do you care about her life or death? Cyrus took a step forward. He was just an illusory shadow, but it forced Draco to keep retreating. I just don't think it's necessary. Aren't the first few people who were attacked not dead? Just let them petrify, let them petrify. How interesting, Draco. Cyrus chuckled. He had walked up to Draco unknowingly and looked at him condescendingly. He could feel Draco Malfoy's breathing, rapid and staccato. Do you know how much effort it takes for me to get out of the diary? It's much more difficult than possessing you. Cyrus said angrily. It's just because you said you wanted to do it yourself that I did this, but now, you are going to back down. I didn't, it's just. Cold sweat continued to flow down his forehead. Although Draco quickly denied it, he couldn't even make up an excuse if he really wanted to. He only felt a huge mass of seawater submerging him, and the water pressure made him breathless. He looked in great pain. At this time, Cyrus' translucent fingers reached towards his chest and pinched the wand he kept in his pocket. Started to look at it slowly. Nice wand, what material is it made of? Cyrus seemed to have completely put aside the matter of asking Malfoy to kill people, and turned to talking about his wand. Hawthorn wood, the core of the staff is unicorn hair. Hawthorn, a strange, paradoxical wand, isn't it? It's like the tree itself is full of paradoxes. Its leaves and flowers have healing properties, but its cutting smell of death. And unicorn hair, nothing less suitable for dark magic. Draco. Cyrus put Malfoy's wand back into the distance and looked into his eyes. You look in pain. Draco had to admit that Tom Riddle was right. But he didn't want to admit it, or in other words, he couldn't say anything now. The friendly, Xiao Tang, in the past seemed to be a different person, making him feel both strange and scared. Fortunately, the other party finally relented. Neither your good nor evil is pure enough, and this is the source of your pain. Cyrus pointed out the opponent mercilessly. He put his hand on Draco's shoulder, and his voice gradually became ethereal, like the psychedelic mermaid's song in the sea. What you can't do, I'll do it. Draco Malfoy, give me your body. Cyrus took advantage of Draco's weakness and took complete control of his body. But he did not immediately attack with the basilisk. He had more important things to do now than attack. Through the conversation with Draco, he already knew that the house elf Dobby stole the diary and delivered it to Draco. Now, Ginny still has the memory of the diary in her mind. If this memory is discovered by Dumbledore, then she may have nothing to hide. We must know whether Ginny revealed the diary and then changed all their memories. Cyrus has no plans to return to Ginny just yet. Now that things have developed to this point, there is actually no need to follow the original plot. As long as there wasn't much difference in general, it would be enough to take Ginny into the secret room and create the illusion that she was going to face Harry Potter. Now, he must find an opportunity and act quickly. However, that's what I say. It was another thing to be disarmed by the Expelliarmus that Harry, Hermione and Ginny jointly performed from the very beginning. A few minutes ago, Cyrus was about to go find Ginny. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked out of the common room door, he turned a corner and met 4 people who had been ambushing here for a long time. 4 voices shouted, Expelliarmus, together, and Ron's wand returned fire and blew himself away. The remaining 3 magic spells flew towards Cyrus, knocking away the hawthorn stick in his hand. In fact, Cyrus is not really powerless. Even if the wand is knocked away, he can still cast magic, but now he has other ideas. Malfoy, give Ginny's diary back, Hermione said rudely, threatening to give him a punch if she didn't hand over the diary. Hurry up, or I will let you taste the taste of slugs. Ginny was even more irritable than Hermione. Don't try to quibble, Harry saw you taking out that diary during class. Ron, whose butt was broken into 8 pieces, quickly got up and stood aside with a fake look. On Valentine's Day, Harry saw Malfoy writing something in a black notebook. He didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but after meeting Ginny, he remembered about the diary. After that, he observed for several days and finally determined that what Malfoy was holding was Ginny's lost diary. That's why this scene happened now. However, looking at the 3 wands pressed against his chin at this moment, Cyrus was not panicked at all. Wait, I'm not Malfoy. Cyrus looked at Ginny sincerely, then lowered his voice, it's me, Riddle. Mr. Riddle. Ginny immediately put down her wand and said in a surprised and happy voice, how are you possessing Malfoy? Oh, so, you are, Tom Riddle. Hermione and her 2 silly sons had strange expressions on their faces. It was Cyrus who was standing in Malfoy's face. No matter what he said, it made people laugh. I don't think it's believable. That's right, Cyrus nodded. Do you remember when we went to Snape to steal the ingredients for the compound potion? At that time, I was the one possessing Ginny. It's really you, Ron said in surprise, but how did you fall into Malfoy's hands? We all thought that the heir stole you away. Harry said doubtfully, Malfoy is not the heir, and he doesn't know who is the heir. Why did he steal you away? Because he wanted to help the heir, Cyrus explained. He didn't know who the heir was, but he found out that I was looking for the heir. He also found out that I was not Ginny, but a memory in the diary, so he found a way to steal the diary. But I didn't expect that I could forcibly control his body. Hearing this, Hermione immediately frowned, as if she thought Cyrus's method was too evil, but Harry and Ron were very happy. I have to say, although you still have the same face, you look much more pleasing to the eye than Malfoy. Ron walked up to him carelessly, put his arm around him, and then lowered his voice. I heard that you helped Ginny write got homework. There were a few times when I thought her level didn't require her to write those assignments. What's wrong? I mean, I have a lot of homework too. Ron. Hermione angrily pulled Ron away from Cyrus. Harry and Ginny were still surrounding him, and Ginny suddenly showed a sad expression. But if you had Malfoy under your control, why didn't you come to me? Cyrus wanted to say that he had originally planned to find her and modify their memories. But when the words came to his lips, they changed into something else. This is too dangerous. I think the successor has discovered my existence. It's just that he hasn't noticed where I am hiding yet. If I come back to you, I may involve you in danger. And I'm using Malfoy's body, so don't worry, no one will think he's an enemy of the successor. I'm not afraid of danger. Ginny said firmly. We're not afraid either, Harry said immediately, hoping that Mr. Riddle could provide him with some useful information. Actually, I'm a little scared. Ron wanted to say this, but looking at his sister and good brother, he swallowed it back. I know you are all brave, but you can't find the murderer alone, right? Hermione interrupted. We can help. You have acted with us, you know. Cyrus looked at her for a long time, then nodded, pretending to be helpless. Okay, I agree for you to join, but before that, I have to make it clear, Ginny, you didn't tell anyone else about the diary, right? No, I only told Hermione and the others. Very good, now I have to change your memory, erase this section of the diary, and replace it with another thing. Cyrus said, I know you will never escape my secret, but the successor may use legilimency to find the answer from your memories. If he discovers my true identity, it will be too easy for him to kill me. Cyrus took the wand back from Harry. You promised to only modify the memory about the diary, not to make us forget everything. Ginny looked at him stubbornly, fearing that this was just a lie told by Cyrus to make them forget everything and stay away from danger. I promise, only modifications. After modifying the memories of Ginny and others, Cyrus finally felt that there was no future trouble. Heart. Now, no one will know that his true identity is just an ordinary diary. Harry and others were in a daze for a moment, and then completely forgot about modifying their memories. So, Mr. Riddle, have you found anything? Or do you know who opened the Chamber of Secrets last time? Harry desperately wanted to know some secrets so that he could find the real secret. The murderer. Clear yourself of suspicion. Especially after he revealed his Parseltongue and Justin was petrified, almost everyone thought he was the murderer. Ginny said that when the secret room was opened 50 years ago, you were the one who caught the murderer. It's me, but I'm afraid you guys won't want to believe it, Cyrus said it tactfully. What does this mean? We need the truth, Mr. Riddle. We can't let the heir do evil anymore. We believe that there may be some connection between the person who opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago and the current one. Harry said anxiously. Well, if you want, I can show you, Cyrus replied. You don't have to listen to me. I can take you into my memory, into the night I caught him. But how? Find an empty classroom with no one around and wait for me there. Cyrus finally erased the diary from their memories, so naturally he would not take it out in front of them. Coincidentally, he had previously found a broken pensive in the room where things were hidden in the room of requirement, and he later repaired it. It was originally a gadget for Draco, but I didn't expect it to come in handy now. After getting the pensive, Cyrus used the Marauder's map to determine the location of Harry and the others. Rush there immediately. How did you know we were here? Ron said in surprise when he saw Cyrus looking for him accurately, but soon he was attracted by the thing in Cyrus' hand. Are you wanting to wash your face? Quote. This is a pensive. Hermione's eyes widened. What is a pensive? It is an alchemical tool that can preserve the thoughts and memories in the mind. Cyrus explained while using the tip of the wand to draw out a small piece of silver memory at his temple. You can understand that the pensive allows you and others to see the situation again in a third-person time. It's like watching a movie, understand? Cyrus dropped the memory into the pensive and scrambled it. Soon the silver object became transparent and looked like glass. Follow me. Cyrus took the initiative to enter his own thoughts. He fell into a cold and dark material, as if being sucked into a black vortex. What should we do? Ron hesitated as he watched Cyrus disappear. Follow me, Harry said without hesitation. Before he could say anything, Ginny had entered the pensive for the second time. Next came Harry, Hermione and finally Ron. Before they could realize what was going on, they found themselves in a novel space. They immediately knew where they were. This round room with a sleeping portrait on the wall is Dumbledore's office, but the person sitting behind the desk is not Dumbledore at the moment, but a wizened wizard with a bald head who looks very weak. There were only a few strands of white hair on his head, and he was reading a letter by candlelight. Harry had never seen this man before. He is Professor Dippet. 50 years ago, he was the principal of Hogwarts. Sellers explained for them. He was talking loudly as usual, which made Harry and the others nervous. I'm sorry, Harry said with a trembling voice, should we keep it down and hide? But the wizard didn't even look up. He continued to read the letter, frowning slightly. Don't worry, they can't see us, they are just memories. Just like me, Cyrus explained. At this moment, Harry and the others felt relieved. At this time, the old wizard sighed, folded the letter, stood up, walked past Harry, without even looking at him, and went straight over to open the curtains. The sky outside the window is covered with red clouds, it seems that it is sunset at this moment. The wizard returned to the table and sat down, twiddling his thumbs absent-mindedly and looking at the door. There was a knock on the door outside the office. Come in, the old wizard said in a weak voice. A boy of about 16 came in and took off his pointed hat. A silver prefect's badge gleamed on his chest. He looked exactly like Cyrus, tall, with black hair and eyes. This person is me, Cyrus explained. In fact, others could tell without him having to say anything. He's much prettier than Lockhart. Ron nudged Hermione with his elbow, and Hermione's face immediately turned red. Ah, Riddle, the principal said. You want to see me, Professor Dippet? Riddle said, looking a little nervous. Sit down, said Dippet, I have been reading the letter you gave me. Oh, Riddle said. He sat down and clasped his hands together. My dear child, said Dippet kindly, I cannot let you stay at school for the summer. You'd love to go home for the holidays, right? No, Riddle said immediately, I would rather stay at Hogwarts than go to that. You lived in a Muggle orphanage during the holidays, right? Dippet asked curiously. Mr. Riddle, you never told me. Ginny looked at Cyrus with sympathy, sadness written all over her face. She never knew that Mr. Riddle had such a past. It's nothing. Cyrus just shook his head. I don't want others to think I'm pitiful, Ginny. This was what he said from the bottom of his heart. Useless sympathy is no comfort. Harry agreed with this more than anyone. He felt closer to Tom Riddle. The experiences of the two of them were so similar. They are almost like brothers who have been separated for 50 years. Yes, sir, Riddle said, blushing slightly. Are you a Muggle born? Mixed blood, sir, Riddle said. My father is a Muggle and my mother is a wizard. Both your parent. My mother died just after giving birth to me, sir. They told me in the orphanage that she only had time to give me a name, Tom, after my father, and a middle name, Marvolo, after my grandfather. Dippet smacked his tongue sympathetically. The thing is, Tom, he sighed and said, we originally wanted to make some special arrangements for you, but under the current circumstances. Are you referring to all these attacks, sir? Riddle asked. Harry's heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and he leaned closer for fear of missing a word. That's true, said the principal. My dear boy, you must see how foolish it would be for me to allow you to stay in the castle after the term is over. Especially after the recent tragedy, that poor little girl died. You would have been much safer in the orphanage. To tell you the truth, the Ministry of Magic is even talking about closing schools. We don't have the slightest clue as to the, source of all these unfortunate events. Riddle's eyes widened. You're sad. I just don't want the school to be closed. So I have to hand over the murderer. Even if he didn't mean to commit murder, Sellers said calmly. He was giving Harry and others a vaccination, so he deliberately emphasized, not on purpose. Harry could understand Riddle's thoughts in his memory. Hogwarts always provides the warmest shelter to those who are homeless. This was the first home and the best home he had ever known. Mr. Riddle and other abandoned boys found a home here. Chapter 51. Sir, if that man is caught, if everything stops. What do you mean? Dippet stood up from his chair as he spoke, his voice a bit harsh. Riddle, are you saying you know something about these attacks? No, sir, Riddle said quickly. Dippet sat back, looking slightly disappointed. You can go now, Tom. Riddle slid out of his chair and trudged out of the room. Several people followed. They descended the spiral staircase and emerged from the monstrous gargoyles in the darkening corridor. Riddle stopped and they stopped, staring at him. Cyrus had a very strange feeling. Although he had watched this memory countless times, this was the first time that he had brought others to watch it. Especially since the owner of the memory looks exactly like him now. In the memory, Riddle was thinking seriously, biting his lip, and wrinkles appeared on his forehead. Then, he seemed to suddenly make up his mind and hurried away, followed quietly by several people. Along the way, they saw no one. Finally they came to the foyer, where a tall wizard greeted Riddle on the marble stairs. What are you doing, Tom? Are you still wandering around so late? It's Dumbledore. Ron stared at the wizard dumbfounded. He was none other than Dumbledore, who was 50 years younger. This is a very strange feeling, as if they are traveling in time. The gray world seems to be the color of time. They are going upstream, tasting sweets that are not their own like thieves. I never thought I could meet such a young Dumbledore, Harry said dully. The Dumbledore of 50 years ago was different from the Dumbledore of today. At that time, he had long flowing auburn hair and a long beard, and his cheeks were not as old as they are now. However, perhaps due to the gray filter of this memory, Harry felt that he looked a little too sad, as if he had walked out of a wet rain. He didn't know what sad things Dumbledore had experienced at that time, but it seemed that the old man was already discouraged. What kept him alive was not hope, but more like punishment. Cyrus knew it very well. 50 years ago, at this time, Grindelwald was still carrying out their plans around the world, the vow they made until death as a boy, but they had already drifted apart. In a few years, people would be cheering for the day he lost his love. In this way, Harry and Dumbledore are also very similar. But Ginny thought of the night she met Dumbledore, and it seemed that there was no difference between it and now. The only thing that remained unchanged about Dumbledore was his eyes that could see through people's hearts. I just had to see the principal, sir, Riddle said. Okay, let's go to bed, Dumbledore said, staring at Riddle with the penetrating gaze that Harry was very familiar with. It's best not to wander in the corridors these days. Since it's already. He sighed heavily, said good night to Riddle, and strode away. Riddle watched him walk out of sight, then quickly walked up the stone steps leading to the underground classroom. However, Riddle did not lead them to a secret passage or a secret tunnel, but to the underground classroom where Snape took potions lessons. The torch was not lit, so when Riddle pushed the door almost shut, Harry could only see Riddle standing motionless in the doorway, staring at the passage outside. They stayed there for at least an hour. Cyrus could tell that Ron was getting a little impatient, because they could only see Riddle's figure standing at the door, peeking out from the crack of the door, waiting like a sculpture. Don't worry, the person who opened the secret room was hiding here with the monsters he raised. Cyrus' words made them calm down. Just when their patience was about to run out, there was movement outside the door. Someone was walking quietly in the passage. They heard the man walking past the underground classroom where he and Riddle were hiding. Riddle was as silent as a shadow, sidled through the crack in the door, and followed. Cyrus led them over. They heard a door creak open and someone whisper in a husky voice. Come out, come up here, come to the box. Is this the heir? This person's voice seems a bit familiar. Hermione frowned and said. They saw the dark figure of a large boy squatting in front of an open door. There was a large box beside the door. Soon they knew why they felt familiar, especially after the dispute between Riddle and Hagrid in their memories. Good evening, Rubeus, Riddle said sternly. It's over, he said. I have to turn you in, Rubeus. They are discussing closing Hogwarts if the attacks don't stop. I know you didn't mean to kill anyone. But monsters are not ideal pets. I guess you just let them out and move around, so. It definitely didn't kill anyone, the big boy said, taking a few steps back and leaning against the closed door. Harry could hear a strange rustling and clicking sound coming from behind him. Riddle moved closer. The parents of the dead girl will be here tomorrow. Hogwarts can at least ensure that the guy who killed their daughter is killed. Not it, the boy yelled, his voice echoing in the dim passage. It won't. Never will. Get out of the way, Riddle said, pulling out his wand. This move immediately made Harry and others nervous. They were looking forward to seeing a wonderful duel, but they were also worried about Riddle's safety. Riddle's spell illuminated the corridor with a sudden burst of fire. It also lit up the huge boy's face. It's Hagrid, several young wizards shouted in surprise, but they were unwilling to believe it was true. How could it be Hagrid? The memory did not stop because of their surprise. Riddle's spell knocked Hagrid into the opposite wall, popping open the door behind him. A huge, hairy, low body flew out so fast that it was almost hard to see what it looked like. Riddle raised his wand again, but it was too late. The creature fled, knocking him to the ground, then dashed down the corridor and disappeared. Ginny and Hermione were both frightened, but Cyrus knew that Riddle had deliberately let the acromantula escape. A person killed by an acromantula looks completely different from a person killed by a basilisk. Riddle stumbled to his feet and looked after it. He raised his wand, but Hagrid rushed at him, seized the wand, and knocked him to the ground again, shouting. No! Hagrid's rough voice shattered Riddle's memory. Cyrus stood in the dark space with several young wizards and fell into silence. They seemed to have not been able to get over the truth they just saw. After a long time, Hermione frowned and defended her friend. Mr. Riddle, could it be that you have found the wrong person? He may not mean it, but you also know that he has a soft spot for huge monsters. Cyrus said, trying his best to take Hagrid out of here and focus their attention on the monsters. The monster escaped at that time, and now someone may have brought it back. But Harry opened his mouth. He wanted to defend Hagrid, but he knew that Cyrus was telling the truth. When they were at Hogwarts last year, Hagrid had tried to raise a fire dragon in his cabin, and the big three-headed dog he called Luwe was something they could not forget for a long time. Back then, when Hagrid was still a teenager, if he heard that there was a monster hiding somewhere in the castle, Harry knew that he would definitely try his best to see it. Hagrid probably thought it was outrageous to keep the beast imprisoned for so long and that it should be given a chance to stretch its legs. Harry could even imagine 13-year-old Hagrid wanting to put a leash and collar on the beast. But Harry also believed that Hagrid would never intentionally kill anyone. I'm afraid that's the truth. Ron, do you still remember the fantastic beasts and where to find them you lent me? Ginny asked. The Ministry of Magic labels the most dangerous creatures as it says, or whatever Hagrid likes. Ron tried to change his perspective. You sound a lot like Percy. After all, who told you to tell on Hagrid? He grumbled. But the monster killed someone, Ron. Cyrus pretended to be helpless and said, I know Hagrid is your friend and he is a good person, so Dumbledore is willing to vouch for him. But he has some issues. Really, I can't just sit back and watch more attacks happen. The attacks have stopped since Hagrid was kicked out. If they close Hogwarts, then I'll be back in a Muggle orphanage. I'm sure you'll understand that I have a legitimate reason to want to be here. The original. Of course Harry understood. Several people were silent. After a long silence, Hermione hesitantly asked the most difficult question. Look, should we ask Hagrid about these things? That was a nice visit, said Ron. Hello, Hagrid, tell us, have you let any wild, furry things out of the castle recently? So they decided not to say anything. The truth seems to have been revealed, but it has become another unspeakable secret. Several people's hearts were heavy and they were a little out of breath. Except for Cyrus. He returned to the Slytherin common room, intending to find a time to continue planning the attack. I remember that the fourth and fifth attacks happened almost at the same time, and it was because of these two attacks that the school was almost closed. Cyrus thought. It's not the time to close the school yet, it must be done step by step to make them think that the situation is not too serious, and it is best to let Dumbledore leave the school smoothly. At that time, it will be much more convenient. You still need to keep in touch with Lucius. Cyrus muttered to himself, sitting alone on the sofa in the common room and crossing his legs. After a while, a tall and strong man came over. From a distance, he looked like a huge green orangutan. Malfoy, Marcus Flint frowned. Why are you still here? Go to practice Quidditch. If we win the game with Ravenclaw, then we still have to play. Slytherin lost to Gryffindor in the Quidditch match last semester. At that time, they had the most advanced brooms and had an absolute advantage. However, Malfoy was too busy taunting Harry, forgetting that he was still competing, and missed the opportunity to get the golden snitch first. After that incident, Marcus Flint was very dissatisfied with Malfoy. But who knows that Malfoy's father is the school director, and Slytherin's broom was donated by his family. Even if you are dissatisfied, you can only endure it. According to the schedule, each college actually has to compete with the other 3 colleges. The final victory is actually calculated based on the points scored during the game. They have lost a game now. If they beat Ravenclaw by 300 points, they still have a chance to enter the finals. In fact, their chances of winning are very high, and the gap between brooms is difficult to close. The problem is that since losing to Gryffindor, Draco Malfoy seems to have lost interest in Quidditch. Although I am still training, I am not devoted at all. Even the most important seeker in the team had this attitude, and other players inevitably began to slack off. With such an attitude, it is really difficult to win. Therefore, when Marcus saw Malfoy doing nothing, he immediately asked him to account in anger. Malfoy, I made an exception by letting you be the seeker, not just to lose. He strode up to Cyrus, his angry face like a twisted gorilla. Because of you, the quality of the team's seekers is much lower than that of other teams. And we can't beat the other teams by more than 150 before the golden snitch appears, do you understand? If you still have this attitude, I will definitely kick you out of the team. Marcus became more and more excited as he spoke, and finally even stretched out his finger to poke Cyrus in the chest. This pissed off Cyrus. Snapped. Cyrus coldly slapped Marcus's hand away. Don't point your fingers at me, Marcus Flint. Or do you want me to hang from the ceiling? Not to mention that he doesn't like to be told what to do by others. Draco, the owner of this body, is still his close friend. How can you be bullied like this? How dare you humiliate me? Marcus's gorilla face immediately turned red. He felt humiliated. Ever since the incident at the fighting club, everyone knew that he was literally hung up and beaten by a freshman, so he received a lot of ridicule. Of course, in response to these ridicules, he naturally used brute force to shut up those people. But now, the little Draco Malfoy actually dares to open up his wounds and add salt to his wounds. What about the Malfoys, who is not 28 pureblood? Looks like I'm going to teach you a lesson, Malfoy. He pulled out his wand angrily and said threateningly, I'll make your face full of pockmarks and make your teeth look worse than that mudblood from Gryffindor. What does it look like? Hearing this, Cyrus, who was still a little angry, suddenly laughed. It turns out that these evil little Slytherins are nothing more than that. The most evil way they can think of is just to make people pockmarked. It's really funny. You know, just now Cyrus planned to hang Marcus up first, then take off his pants and stuff his head into the toilet. Then do as you say. What? Expelliarmus. Cyrus didn't even take out his wand, but directly shot out a red light with his bare hands, knocking down Marcus's wand. He casually took it and held the other person's wand in his hand. The wand is made of blackthorn wood, and the core doesn't look like unicorn hair. Cyrus flicked it slightly, and it felt much easier to use than Draco's awkward wand. He believed that the core of the wand might be the dragon's heartstrings or the nerves of a fire dragon. Then, the front teeth matched the stick. A curse immediately hit Marcus, and then his 2 front teeth began to grow crazily, turning his otherwise good gorilla face into a rabbit face. It's a pity that he is not as cute as a rabbit. Marcus was surrounded by the pain of teething. The protruding teeth stretched his mouth open, making it impossible for him to speak a word. All he could do was whimper. In the common room, other people had already discovered this scene. They looked panicked and rushed out to find Snape. Cyrus turned a blind eye, never taking such a skirmish to heart in the first place. Instead, he mercilessly released a magic spell towards Marcus again. This time, his face was like a blooming gypsophilia, covered with dense black spots. Marcus was rolling on the ground in pain. I hope you can learn your lesson and be more respectful to me next time. Cyrus no longer looked at Marcus and found a comfortable position to sit down on the sofa. Also, I won't be participating in Quidditch training, but I will be here during the game. There is really no need to participate in Quidditch training. The Quidditch competition this semester will be cancelled because of him anyway, but he does plan to participate in the competition. Although he has no interest in Quidditch, if he doesn't participate, wouldn't Draco be kicked out of the team? He didn't want to make his close friend sad. Not long after, Snape arrived with a gloomy expression. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Marcus Flint rolling on the ground. The other little wizards were frightened and surrounded the culprit sitting on the sofa. Marcus Flint again. First he was hung from the ceiling by a first-year student, and now he was beaten and rolled all over the floor by Malfoy. But Snape actually knew very well that although Marcus's grades were not very good, it was impossible to say that he was a waste. Ginny Weasley beat him because she had something wrong. But how could Draco Malfoy beat the other person like this? He knew how much Draco Malfoy was capable of. Snape had taken great care of him since he entered Hogwarts. The purpose is to repay the kindness he received from Lucius for helping him back then. Therefore, he knew better than anyone how much Draco weighed. At best, he is on the same level as Pot, or even a little bit worse. He can actually defeat Flint. He lowered his head and glanced at the embarrassed Marcus. After finding that the other man was fine, he immediately called 2 classmates to take him to the school doctor's office. Then he turned to question Cyrus. "What's going on, Malfoy?" "Nothing." Cyrus spread his hands and looked directly into Snape's eyes. "I was sitting on the sofa this morning, and then Flint came over and asked me to go to training. I asked him not to point fingers at me, and he just threatened to make my face pockmarked and my teeth to be as big as Miss Granger. He was the one who threatened me first, Professor. That's why I hit him back in the same way. Using the Expelliarmus you taught us in the dueling club last time. Have you learned it?" Snape's tone rarely contained a hint of surprise. He had only demonstrated the disarming spell once, but he didn't expect that someone actually learned it. Cyrus nodded. He didn't boast that he could cast spells without a wand. "Next time something like this happens, come to me directly." He obviously knew that Cyrus was not lying. "I promised your father to take care of you, but don't cause trouble for me." Hearing this, Cyrus immediately nodded obediently. Failed again. Cyrus looked at the potion in the crucible that gradually turned from bright red to black, and he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. He couldn't remember how many times he had tried to refine the magic stone and failed. This does not include the number of failures he had simulated in his memory. "I have strictly followed Nico's notes and the 22 techniques summarized from other people's experiences, but the result is still a failure. What other secrets are there in the Jewish Book of Abraham? What variables existed when Nico Flamel was refining the Philosopher's Stone that even he didn't know about? What is the so-called essence?" He only felt that a large number of mysteries were popping up in his mind one after another. "My mind feels like it's going to explode." Cyrus knew that even if he continued to think about it now, he might not get the answer and it would just be a waste of time. When Dangji waved his hand, everything in the room disappeared. Since there is no progress in alchemy for the time being, it is better to practice magic spells first. He took out the Book of the Red Dragon, the Book of Solomon, the Book of Roger Eyre, the complete collection of dark curses. These banned books, the so-called forbidden books, on the one hand, are because they contain powerful and terrifying magic power, but also because they are obscure and difficult to understand. Fortunately, at least Cyrus's talent in this area is much better than that of alchemy. The Book of the Red Dragon records methods of resurrecting the dead, but after analysis, Cyrus discovered that this was actually just a method of creating inferi, and the resurrected dead could not be considered a true resurrection at all. How to refine the inferi? This is something that Voldemort already had in his memory. Although the method recorded in the Red Dragon book is different, perhaps the efficiency of refining the inferi is faster. But Cyrus really doesn't like the necromancer's approach. Moreover, the inferi do not actually have very strong combat effectiveness. They can serve as cannon fodder, but they are completely defenseless when faced with fire. It just so happens that most of the powerful wizards in this world have powerful fire magic. For example, Dumbledore's ancient fairy fire and Vulcan clear the road, Grindelwald's blue fire gas stove, and even the relatively advanced version of Voldemort are also good at using powerful fire. Cyrus actually wanted to create his own flame. By coincidence, the Book of Red Dragons recorded the devil flames of red dragons and the ice flames of white dragons. He planned to combine several kinds of magic with fierce fire, and the mention of a kind of hellfire in the Book of Solomon also made him excited. You can add protective spells, defensive spells, phantom transformations, and enemy trap spells into the flames. Grindelwald's fire shield is integrated with many spells. In fact, the power of this magic is not as terrifying as Lee fire, but it is more applicable. The power to destroy Paris is just incidental, and it is more important to identify his true believers. However, Cyrus said that he wanted it both in terms of power and effectiveness. And even better, inventing new magic is an interesting thing for Cyrus. Although failure is inevitable, this kind of failure is not a real failure. At most, it is just that the magic invented does not meet his expectations. Not a failure, just on the way to success. It's like he tried to copy Grindelwald's fire shield first, but found that the most difficult thing was not to add those defensive spells to the flames, but to let them distinguish between ourselves and the enemy and only attack those who were not loyal enough to him. This complex magic is like a program, starting with if, and then forming a fork. After the command given to the flame identifies the target through the if condition, it will show different characteristics. To the enemy, burn everything, to protect the believers, to defend against the attack. Now, Cyrus understood why the fire shield was not as powerful as Li Huo. The magic of this world is closely related to the wizard's emotions. Fierce fire is the craziest of all fire magics. They have no other use than burning and destroying, spreading and swallowing everything. This absolute destructive power and determination to destroy everything make Li Huo so powerful. Fire shield is not such a magic. It is controlled. The power of protection contained in the magic has to make the caster's heart become more peaceful rather than crazy. Two different emotions must reach a balance. In this way, the power of the fire shield's body protection is naturally impossible to match that of Li Huo. But when it comes to letting Cyrus make his own choice, he still prefers fire shield protection. Not only because they are handsome, but although there is some gap in the power of these two magics, they are enough if they are just used to destroy something. Bullets can accurately kill the enemy and leave hostages. There is no need to use nuclear weapons to kill the enemy together. In the room of requirement, Cyrus held Flint's wand in his hand and slowly circled it like an elegant musician. Hot blue flames ignited around him, like a radiating wand. The anticyclone gradually spreads until it fills the entire interior space of the room of requirement. But when he walked in the flames, he did not feel the heat and danger of the flames at all. Instead, he felt as happy as walking on the green wilderness. Fire shield. The swaying flames are like clusters of bluebells swaying in the wind. Although Grindelwald's signature skills were reproduced, Cyrus was actually not very satisfied. He once again added many transformation spells to the flames, and demons with blue heads immediately emerged from the hell of bluebells. Then, he added 2 dragon fires from the Book of Red Dragons, and the Hellfire and Fire Jade from the Book of Solomon, to the flames. The color of the flame changed immediately. The originally beautiful blue flame seemed to be soaked in blood and became the color of death. The bluebells seemed to wither and wither. However, bloody mandala blossomed on its corpse, paving a road illuminated by fire. In this way, a brand new fire magic was born in his hands. Many black spells and magic fires have increased the power of the flames, making up for the lack of fire shield power. Of course, this insufficiency can only be said to be relative. After all, it was a powerful spell that could destroy Paris. How could it really be insufficient in power? What if the curse of creating the Inferi is also integrated into it? Cyrus suddenly thought. Although he looks down on the Inferi, if the enemy sees his comrade swallowed by the flames stand up from the flames again, how will this situation affect the opponent's belief? Cyrus immediately opened the Book of Red Dragons, and incorporated the spell for making the Inferi into it. In an instant, this terrifying spell finally took shape. Even Cyrus himself was struck by the evil of the curse. First destroy the enemy, and then drive the enemy's corpse to fight with their original companions. Such cruel magic may even make Voldemort himself become Cyrus's #1 fan after seeing it. When Satan comes, you have to hand him some flowers. Cyrus suddenly had some resistance to this magic, or maybe it was a resistance to the evil hidden in his heart. But now that the curse has been invented, even if you don't plan to use it in the future, you should at least give it a name. I remember that in Bleach, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's Zanpakuto seemed to have similar abilities. After the swastika, the residual fire Tatonen fire 10 trillion's death burial formation is a move to recall the corpse of the deceased. However, this name is a bit too awkward to twist, so Cyrus plans to call it Hot Hell. Dumbledore didn't even have time to straighten his beard before he hurried towards the school hospital. A few minutes ago, he met Professor McGonagall's patron saint, a silver tabby cat. Minerva, Phileas, how are you? From a distance, he saw a worried-looking McGonagall and an equally worried Flitwick standing at the door. Flitwick was only about half as tall as McGonagall. Lockhart was joining in the fun, and he simply couldn't stay out of focus for even a second. Same as before, petrified. McGonagall saw Dumbledore coming, and immediately seemed to have seen the backbone. The person who was attacked was Penelope Crevel, a Ravenclaw student, a good student with both good character and academic performance. Still a prefect of Ravenclaw. Percy Weasley found her in an empty classroom on the 4th floor this morning, McGonagall said. Dumbledore immediately walked into the school doctor's office, and several other professors quickly followed. Madame Pomfrey was bending down and taking something out of Penelope's hand. A small mirror. Dumbledore immediately guessed how Penelope had escaped from the basilisk. But he didn't know about the attack. After Cyrus discovered that the portrait in the castle was Dumbledore's spy, he naturally refused to make the same mistake again. Instead of moving the basilisk through the corridors, he kept it inside the pipes and only let it out at the moment of attack. As for Cyrus himself, he hid it even better. This is the 4th attack, Albus. 3 students were injured. McGonagall was full of worry. I'm afraid this matter can't be suppressed. What will the school board say? No response yet. Dumbledore shook his head. He originally thought that the school board might intend to close Hogwarts, but in fact it did not. Maybe it's because no real murder has happened yet, or maybe someone thinks it's not the right time yet. That would be great, but we have to find the murderer. You will find it, Minerva, Dumbledore whispered. There was almost no expression on his face, making it difficult to see what he was really thinking. Yes, you will find it. As long as I do it myself. Lockhart found the right moment and jumped out immediately, showing his signature smile. Mag immediately showed a disgusted expression. To be honest, at other times, even if she didn't like Lockhart, she would never be so rude. But now that the situation is so serious, Lockhart thought it was child's play and it was annoying. After all, he is still the same Gilderoy Lockhart. It's the same Lockhart who, in order to attract attention, transformed the Death Eaters during the war years into a reappearance of corpses, and launched his name into the air to create panic. If I remember correctly, you seem to have been trumpeting that the successor had been driven away by you 2 weeks ago. Snape appeared behind Lockhart at some point and sneered. Then, regardless of Lockhart's reaction, he came directly to Dumbledore and whispered, Ginny Weasley didn't go anywhere this morning. She stayed with Pod and the others. But, there is something I must tell you. His voice dropped lower. In the end, he almost didn't speak, but looked directly at Dumbledore. Ginny Weasley lost something. Single quote. This information immediately made Dumbledore's mind clearer. After he noticed that Ginny had a problem before, he asked Snape to pay more attention to her. Now it seems that Voldemort was probably aware of this kind of surveillance, so he took the initiative to leave Ginny Weasley and took control of her. Other little wizards. And that lost thing must be the Horcrux left by Voldemort. You've left too many holes, Tom. Single quote. Dumbledore couldn't help but think. But the question is, what is that missing thing? Snape just shook his head. Legilimency is not an omniscient spell. The memories of Ginny and others have been modified by Cyrus. They can't remember anything that was lost. Snape naturally can't remember anything. It's impossible to know the answer. Now it seems that the other party is still very cautious. Dumbledore held the mirror he took from Penelo and groaned. 50 years ago, Tom Riddle took Myrtle's life without hesitation. It was actually an accident, and now, from Lady Norris to Penelo, no life has died there, head in the hands of the monster. The water in the bathroom, the camera, the ghost and the mirror. Everything seemed to be just a coincidence, but he knew that there couldn't be such a coincidence in this world. The only possibility is that Tom doesn't want anyone to die. Naturally, Dumbledore would not think that Tom Riddle had repented and had compassion. The only explanation is that he didn't want the school to close. It was understandable to Dumbledore that he didn't want the school to close 50 years ago. But now, what is he longing for? What is it about this school that attracts him? Dumbledore thought for a moment and came up with the answer. Harry Potter. That's right. If there was anything that interested him, Tom Riddle, it would probably be Harry Potter. When he, the Horcrux, used some method to learn from Ginny Weasley that Harry Potter had destroyed the mysterious man. The soul in the Horcrux, who knows nothing about this matter, must be wondering, what kind of magic power does a baby have that can defeat Lord Voldemort? He'll find the kid. The thought flashed through Dumbledore's mind. And as he thought about it, he became more and more certain that this would definitely happen. From the first attack, the other party has been blaming Harry as the attacker. On Halloween night, Harry, who happened to be absent from the dinner party, encountered the first attack. The second person attacked was Colin Creevey, who took many embarrassing photos of Harry. The third person was Justin. Harry just happened to be caught in the act by Filch. All the evidence points to Harry. Tom Riddle must be trying to get Harry into trouble, trying to lead him to take the initiative to investigate the Chamber of Secrets and the successor. Only in this way can they finally meet alone. And this is exactly what Dumbledore wanted. He knows what I want. Single quote. Dumbledore quickly understood that this was a game. Tom Riddle threatened himself with the life of his student to eliminate himself as a threat and confront the little boy. If I guessed correctly, I'm afraid it won't be long before I have to leave Hogwarts because of some things. But Dumbledore wasn't actually too worried. Tom thought he could win because his opponent was just a second-year wizard. But Dumbledore thought he underestimated Harry. Early the next morning, when news of Penelope Creville's attack spread throughout Hogwarts, the young wizards thought that Harry Potter must be crazy. At first he only attacked those who were against him, but now he has started to target all wizards from the Muggle world. Ernie Macmillan said matter-of-factly to everyone he knew. He almost believed that Harry was the murderer, and even fabricated the story of how Harry directed the monster to attack others. He also questioned why the professors didn't expel Harry. It's like he saw it with his own eyes. Ron rolled his eyes and defended Harry. I feel like almost all the rumors came from Ernie Macmillan. During the charms class, Cyrus deliberately got rid of Malfoy's 2 lackeys and came a little late. With no other seat, he could only sit behind Harry and Ron, in the same row as Hermione. He deliberately showed an expression of disgust on his face to make others think that he was not so willing. But secretly he was bickering with Hermione. Hermione blushed, remembering the Mr. Riddle she had seen in the pensive not long ago. Let me ask you, when did you start possessing Ginny? Hermione lowered her head and asked in a low voice with a blushing face. The first time he was possessed was not long after school started last year. After Colin Creevey was petrified during the Quidditch match last semester, and until Christmas, I was mostly in control. What happened? No, it's nothing. But Hermione's face was even redder than before. Cyrus could feel the heat even as he sat next to her. She changed the subject, poked Harry sitting in front of him with her quill, and threw a note over. What should we do? Maybe we should go find Hagrid and ask about this. But Hagrid has no way of knowing who opened the Chamber of Secrets this time. Harry replied reluctantly. Asking him to question Hagrid would be worse than killing him. He couldn't help but think back to the last time Justin was attacked. At that time, Professor Dumbledore took him to the principal's office, and Hagrid rushed in to speak for himself. Hagrid believes in me so much, but I'm doubting him. At least we can ask what the monster is in the Chamber of Secrets. Hermione said immediately. The only person who was as reluctant to go to Hagrid as Harry was Cyrus. You must know that his current identity is the Riddle, who framed Hagrid and was imprisoned. Although not many people know the truth of that year and Voldemort's true identity, perhaps even Hagrid doesn't know. But if 2 people meet like this, it will never be a wonderful encounter. He had to stop Hermione. It's better to wait. He stretched out his hand to intercept the note. Maybe there are other ways. I believe the professors will not remain indifferent. Hagrid did not intentionally commit these crimes back then. Now he will uncover them. His scars are too cruel. Harry looked at Cyrus with emotion. Mr. Riddle, I didn't expect you to be such a nice person. Hermione still felt that this was not good, but, if someone else. If someone is killed again, we will go find Hagrid. Cyrus said forcefully, tell everything clearly. What if someone is killed again? We have to go find Dumbledore. Fred and George had a rare disagreement. We must make everything clear. But this way our secret will be completely exposed. George said with a frown. There is no difference between being completely exposed now. Fred said, think about it, the heir stole the Marauder's map. Do you still expect that he will return it to us after using it? Now there is another victim. Or a prefect. Look how frightened Percy has been in the past 2 days. We have to do something. George said nothing, but the scales in his heart began to tilt. Fred has a point. If the heir takes their map and attacks the little wizard in the castle and then escapes, then they are no different from accomplices. And the possibility of getting back the Marauder's map is almost zero. In this case, what does it matter whether the secret is exposed or not? Think about it, if the clues we provide are helpful, maybe we will be the heroes who caught the heir. Fred suddenly said, did you know that Ron and the others are also looking for the murderer? If we can be one step ahead, he will definitely be furious. Hearing this, George immediately smiled knowingly. Rather than becoming a hero, they were more happy to have their brother work hard for a long time but get nothing. I can already imagine his frustrated face. George touched Fred's shoulder, and the two of them walked towards Professor McGonagall's office in unison. Professor, regarding the successor, we have important information that we want to report to Principal Dumbledore. Heir, Mag's dignified face trembled a little. She stood up and looked seriously at the two troublemakers in front of her, George, Fred. I hope you understand that now is not the time to play pranks. Quote. We didn't, how could you think so? That's right, you won't find better behaved students at Hogwarts than us. The twins looked hurt. Since the first day you came to Hogwarts, there have been no rules. McGonagall's eyes widened, but she still led them towards the principal's office. Listen, if you dare to do anything about this, just kidding, I'll write a letter and ask your mother to take you home to reflect for a semester. Do not worry. Absolutely awesome. Mag led them to the gargoyle statue and gave the password. Today's password is, Jelly Slug. Go up yourselves. Mag held both hands in front of her and looked seriously at the spiral elevator rising. George and Fred immediately took the elevator up and it was obvious that they were very excited. The elevator lifted the two of them up, and after slowly opening it, a spacious and beautiful circular room immediately appeared in front of them. The room was filled with all kinds of funny little noises. On the table with slender legs, there were many strange silverwares placed, spinning and spitting out small puffs of smoke. The walls are covered with portraits of old principals, both men and women, snoring gently in their respective frames. There was also a huge table in the room with claw-shaped legs. Dumbledore was lying on the table, raised his head, and looked at them in surprise. What advice do you two have? Fred and George had to take their attention away from the novel things in the principal's office. We have something important to report to you, sir. About the successor. An important thing. Dumbledore looked even more surprised than before. He was sitting there thinking about what Ginny Weasley's lost thing could be, or what the Horcrux could be. Unexpectedly, two guests came. Do I have to say it now? We thought it best to say it before the next attack happens. The twins shook their shoulders at the same time. This obviously piqued Dumbledore's interest, and according to the twins, it seemed to be related to the attack. Perhaps the doubts that are bothering me at the moment will be solved soon. Please sit down, gentlemen. He stood up and poured them a cup of black tea himself. I think I can listen to you slowly describe what happened. It's best not to leave out any details. This matter has something to do with our sister. Professor, you may not know that there was a thief in her dormitory not long ago. Something very important was lost. It's a magic item. Fred and George spoke to each other one by one. Oh, I just heard something. Dumbledore said with a smile on his face. So, do you know what she lost? Who would have thought that a second ago, he was pondering over doubts that he had no clue about, and now the answer was delivered to him. That evil thing, Horcrux. His true face will be revealed soon. Dumbledore's eyes showed anticipation, but his expression did not change much. Of course we know. In fact, it was ours. The twins said at the same time, but this made Dumbledore confused. Your stuff. When were Horcruxes still in their hands? It can't be considered ours, but we did discover its secret. He sat upright and emphasized again, "Please talk about it carefully." The twins had to start from the beginning again. "So, when you were in first grade, you discovered a marauder's map. It could mark the location of everyone in the castle, right?" Dumbledore finally figured out what the twins wanted to talk about. It was not the true identity of the Horcrux in his imagination, but another magical item that could be called great. Moreover, this is indeed a very important piece of information. "That's right, even my name," Dumbledore confirmed. "Everyone's name." Fred and George nodded in unison. "Padfoot, Prongs, Moony, and Wormtail made them. They are great people. They are specially made for those of us who encourage and violate school rules. There is such a map. But now this map may have fallen into the hands of that successor." Yes, Ginny wanted to use the map to find the attacker, but not long after, her dormitory was stolen. Fred said, "We are worried that if the attacker uses this map, he can do more." "Okay, attack. Or hide yourself," George added. "Your worries are very reasonable." Dumbledore agreed very much. "I am very happy that you are willing to share this important secret with me, an old man." His eyes flickered. After hearing what the twins said, he already knew who made the map. It's just that he didn't expect that the four Remus Lupins actually had such abilities. A magic item that even he was marked on. What would happen if Riddle got this map? He can confirm his location at all times to ensure that he can choose the right path and leave Hogwarts safely. Who can find him then? Let me confirm again, can the Marauder's map only mark the locations of people who were born inside the castle? That's right, Fred replied. However, we also found that the map cannot mark every location in the castle. For example, the location of the secret room is not displayed on it. Obviously, the four Mr. Marauders have not found the location of the secret room. Hogwarts always has so many secrets that are surprising. Dumbledore smiled. Then, can you please tell me? Now, if you want to leave the castle, what are some unknown secret passages? There are 7 in total. Filch knows 4 of them, but we think the attacker might not care about Filch, they said. The remaining 3, one is behind the mirror on the 5th floor, and the other is behind the statue of the one-eyed old woman, leading directly to Honeyduke's cellar. We usually use these 2 when sneaking out before. Hey, George. Fred patted George on the head. Sorry, I spilled the beans. Don't worry, I won't punish you for this. Dumbledore laughed. I think sometimes you have to take a little adventure to make life interesting enough, right? A close friend. I can't agree more, the twins exclaimed exaggeratedly. We estimate that not many people have used the last one. It's located next to the Whomping Willow. But if the successor is strong enough, he might not care much about the Whomping Willow. As long as he doesn't care about making a big noise, they said. Dumbledore knew this passage better than anyone else. He originally planted the Whomping Willow tree, and he prepared the passage under the Whomping Willow for a special student. The twins thought that there was a dangerous Whomping Willow guarding it, and that the heir to the Chamber of Secrets would never escape from there, but Dumbledore thought exactly the opposite. It would be easy for Riddle to kill the Whomping Willow, not to mention that it was impossible for the majestic Dark Lord to not even know how to subdue the Whomping Willow. Just touching the scar of the Whomping Willow can silence the terrifying willow tree. I have to say that the information you told me is really important. Perhaps it will be directly related to whether we can catch the attacker in the end. Dumbledore was not shy about his thanks. It's easy. The twins were also very happy that they could help. In return, I think I can promise you that if I find the map, it will be returned to its original owner and back to your hands. And I will keep this secret for you until you graduate. Dumbledore winked playfully. Real. After sending Fred and George away, the relief on Dumbledore's face immediately disappeared. He returned to his chair, bowed his head and pondered. Which secret passage will you choose to leave? Or, can you beat that boy? There were no more attacks until March. Several mandrakes that had become taciturn became noisy again and held a lively and noisy dance party in the 3rd greenhouse, which made Professor Sprout very happy. It is estimated that in another month or 2, they will be fully mature. At that time, those who were petrified can finally wake up. Cyrus was also very happy. As time went by, resurrection seemed to be close at hand. The joy in his heart made his patron saint gradually take shape. It was not very clear, but he could still tell that it was a huge one, flying birds. When the mandrake matures, you can steal a leaf, and after resurrection you can try to transform into an animagus. Single quote. Voldemort was not an animagus, and he looked down upon such useless moves. He didn't even pay attention to magical animals, let alone ordinary animals. But Cyrus had no such idea. An unregistered animagus was simply a symbol of freedom. In the early morning, Cyrus sat on the Slytherin seat, eating breakfast and reading the letter sent by Lucius Malfoy. During this period of time, he had been communicating with Lucius in Malfoy's voice, and occasionally urged Lucius to act faster in the name of Riddle. However, the school governors of Hogwarts said that the energy of the family is no less than that of the Malfoy family. This is not something that can be accomplished quickly. Not to mention that he had to find the right time to cooperate with Cyrus to put pressure on the Ministry of Magic so that they would be forced to send Hagrid to Azkaban for a few days. In fact, when Cyrus used Ginny's body to get along with Hagrid, he still liked the big guy, but in order to be resurrected, he could only give in to him. Azkaban is so great. The people there are so expletive, well-spoken, and all of them are talented in dark magic. Cyrus convinced himself, while picking up a fork, forking a piece of sausage and stuffing it into his mouth. What Azkaban? Why are you still sitting here? Isn't your Slytherin team playing against Ravenclaw today? Ginny couldn't help but see him sitting alone and eating slowly, ran over and asked. Originally she didn't care whether the Slytherin team won or lost, but it was different now. Mr. Riddle became Slytherin's seeker. Although the other people in Slytherin were very hateful, Ginny still wanted to see him. Les can win in the game. Quidditch. Cyrus raised his eyebrows and then remembered another thing. Not long ago, Marcus Flint specifically asked him to train for this purpose. I simply forgot. He stood up. I wonder why there are so few people eating breakfast today. Although Cyrus is actually not very interested in Quidditch, it is rare for him to travel to this magical world and possess Draco. If he does not experience Quidditch, he is missing something. What's more, if you miss this time, you will probably not have another chance in the future. The main thing is a sense of experience. The two walked towards the Quidditch pitch, and most of the students were already seated. Many students also brought binoculars. The seats were literally raised into the air, but it was still difficult to see the action at times. Are you nervous? Ginny opened her mouth and asked in a low voice. Seeing so many spectators, even her heart seemed to be suspended. What's so stressful about this? Cyrus shook his head relaxedly. If he and Dumbledore were not careful in the game, he might die, so that's why he was nervous. Quidditch game, just a little relaxation. They separated at the entrance, and Cyrus walked directly towards the Slytherin team's lounge. The game only started around 11 o'clock in the morning, but now, all the players are here, even the Seeker. Now, last year's Seeker, Terrence Higgs, was looking at Sellers with a surprised look on his face, as if he didn't expect him to appear here. Immediately, surprise turned to fear. Malfoy, why are you? Terrence Higgs was incoherent, and he couldn't help but tighten his hand holding the broom, sweat dripping from his palms. Marcus Flint, who is still the captain, seems very embarrassed. Since the last time Cyrus gave him a severe lesson in the Slytherin common room, not many wizards in Slytherin were willing to mess with Cyrus. After all, with his strength here and the protection of Dean Snape, he would not be punished for beating anyone. It was Marcus who said that you would no longer participate in Quidditch, so Terrence stammered, and he did not hesitate to shift the responsibility to Marcus, but it's actually pretty much what he said. So Cyrus set his sights on Marcus. I said I would participate. Is your ear not good? Cyrus pulled out the wand. This wand was even Marcus's, but now it belonged to him. Do you want me to treat it for you? Ichiji. Seeing him pick up the wand, all the members of the team took a step back in fear, shivering and hiding behind the slender broom pole, as if the pole could hide their appearance. But you don't come to the training. Marcus could only say bravely. But I said I would come. Cyrus took the broom from Terrence's hand unceremoniously. I'm sorry, I'll go first this time, and you can come next time. After giving the little snakes a little Dark Lord shock, Cyrus stopped teasing them. He completely deliberately wanted to create this unreasonable appearance of himself. If these little hooligans didn't know the pain, they wouldn't understand how powerful he was. Cyrus didn't want any more trouble. I just feel a little sorry for Terrence Higgs, he is a handsome young man, but unfortunately the Nimbus 2001 in his hand has not warmed up yet, so he has to hand it over. Okay, now I'll take command. Cyrus's interest was extremely high. This is a bit like experiencing a roller coaster or bungee jumping. Although I am not that interested in Quidditch, it is still interesting to participate once in a while. And since he participated, he wanted to win. Wait, I'm the team, Marcus shouted quickly, but before he could finish speaking, his mouth seemed to be mute and he couldn't pronounce a single syllable. Not anymore, Cyrus said without looking back. I will lead you to victory. By the way, who are on the Ravenclaw team? You're finally here, Ginny. Hermione stood up tall and waved to greet Ginny, who was belatedly arriving. They sat at the farthest end of the auditorium, where the view was the best. Although it was a bit far, they could still see the game clearly with the telescope kindly provided by Hagrid. You're too slow, Ginny. Ron muttered unhappily. Why did you go? Here, Malfoy is here, Ginny said as she sat down next to Hermione. He really forgot that today is a Quidditch match. I knew he didn't look like he was interested in Quidditch, Hermione said with an expected expression. He is much more interested in studying than Quidditch, and the books he reads or even I can't even understand it, especially alchemy and runes. You two should learn from him. The latter sentence was addressed to Ron and Harry. Harry smiled awkwardly, and Ron immediately changed the subject. To be honest, I never dreamed that I would cheer for Slytherin in this life. If someone had told me this last year, I would have given him a slap to wake him up. But if Slytherin really won, Harry, you will have to face their Nimbus 2001 again, he said worriedly, having the urge to immediately boo Slytherin. What are you talking about? Mr. Riddle is our friend. Ginny was so angry that she spilled the beans. Fortunately, there were nearly 1,000 spectators, and almost 800 people were cheering for Ravenclaw, her voice rising. After a while, no one heard what they were saying. Harry was not worried at all and said, the possibility of winning is very small. Quidditch is not just good at broomstick. As far as I know, Malfoy doesn't seem to have participated in a single training, right? I think he just wants to experience Quidditch. After all, it's hard to get the chance, so let's cheer him on. After hearing what he said, Ginny and Hermione began to worry that Cyrus would make a fool of himself. Don't worry, Ron saw their emotions. It's impossible for anyone to fly worse than Malfoy. The four people laughed at the same time. In fact, Malfoy's flying skills are still very good, worse than Harry, but better than most people. It's just that he is not so much competing as he is competing with Harry. His eyes are almost on Harry's body, and he is looking for the golden snitch. Look, the people from the Ravenclaw team are coming out, Hermione said suddenly. Harry immediately stretched his neck and looked over there. He remembered that the seeker of the Ravenclaw team was a girl. He didn't think much of it last year, but the last few times he saw her, he found her more and more cute. How good is the Ravenclaw team? Hermione asked. She wasn't particularly keen on Quidditch and hadn't watched any other games besides Harry's games last year. Not bad. Among all the teams at Hogwarts, Conservative is also among the top 4. Harry said seriously, which can be said to be quite euphemistic. In fact, the overall strength of the Ravenclaw team is indeed worse than the others, but in fact the gap between the 4 teams is actually very small. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw have never been favorites to win the championship. If Slytherin doesn't secretly do something evil, there is still hope of winning. Harry said from Jongchu's perspective, she is so cute, isn't she? Lick the dog to soak it up, don't forget who we are here to cheer for. Besides, if you like her so much, why don't you confess your love to her on Valentine's Day? Ginny crossed Hermione and patted Harry's cheek. A tap on the back of his head brought him out of his dazed state. If I confessed to her at that time, then I would really have no hope, Harry complained, rubbing his head. He now felt a little nostalgic for the shy Ginny back in the summer. On the field, the captain of the Ravenclaw team, Roger Davis, the king of pirates, was seriously saying to his subordinates, be careful, people in Slytherin are very hooligans when they play, so be careful. Injured. They also changed the broom this year. I think we are hanging, Chaser Jeremy Stratton said in frustration, shaking his head. Don't think so, at least we know that their seeker is terrible, Jongchu said with a smile, since Harry Potter can win, so can we. And we can win even more beautifully. That's right, Roger nodded. Jong, when the time comes, you will do your best to find the golden snitch. Jason and Duncan, your task is to protect Jong and don't let Slytherin people do it. Randolph, Jeremy and we will attack with all our strength. There will definitely be more score points. Grant, guard the goal. It sounds pretty easy, Jensen said. Come on, he just said each of our roles once. Jeremy said helplessly. The Slytherin team members are also coming out. Someone said something. Everyone on the Ravenclaw team immediately looked into the distance, and sure enough they saw a row of green rapeseed flowers standing together. But what makes them strange is that Marcus Flint, who should have been at the leading position, is now standing at the end with his tail curled up. On the contrary, Malfoy, who had lost to Harry in the last competition, stood at the front. His white hair reflected in the sun, making him look like a bald man. Malfoy, what's going on? Slytherin changed captain. Sure enough, you still need to be able to make money. If my father could replace all Ravenclaws with Nimbus 2001, would I also be able to be the captain? Randolph said enviously. Shut up. Roger wanted to hit him with a broom. But to be honest, if the other party can really get 7 Nimbus 2001, then it doesn't really matter if he gives up the captain's position. But this is obviously impossible. In the face of a formidable enemy, there is no need to say more such boring nonsense. At this time, Mrs. Huochi was standing in the center of the court, with a whistle hanging around her neck and her right arm raised, signaling the two teams to move towards her. Roger was naturally very familiar with the process of Quidditch and led the team members through it. Cyrus on the other side also walked to Mrs. Hoki's side after being reminded by other team members. Look, I want everyone to play fair and honestly. She seemed to be talking specifically to Marcus Flint, because when she discovered that Marcus was standing at the back of the team uncharacteristically, she gave him a very strange look. Then, his eyes turned to Cyrus. The Malfoy brat. Well, to her it was still someone who needed to be warned. I say it again, be fair and honest. I'm the fairest, Cyrus said, raising his chin. Very well, then everyone please ride on the broomstick. Cyrus steps into Malfoy's Nimbus 2001. Ms. Huochi blew her silver whistle hard. The game begins. 15 broomsticks jumped out at once, and the Slytherin team was obviously much faster than Ravenclaw. XCOM. However, speed is only one aspect, flexibility is the aspect that tests the true strength of a Quidditch player. Cyrus cheated at the beginning and cast a psychic spell on himself, so he could rely on magic to find the location of the golden snitch without using his eyes. Make sure that when it appears, you won't ignore it because of the blind spot in your field of vision. In fact, cheating is not necessarily true. After all, the rules of Quidditch only emphasize that you cannot use wands, but they do not say that you cannot use magic. It's just that there are not many wizards who can cast spells without the help of a wand. Not to mention the more difficult spells like the super sensory curse. Once you open up God's vision, Quidditch becomes much easier. He flew directly to the top of the court, almost as if he was out of the game. The other Slytherin players took advantage of the broom and quickly launched a powerful attack. For the Ravenclaw team, if they want to win the game, they can only try to prevent Slytherin from scoring, and at the same time, catch the golden snitch before the score is opened by 150 points. Zhongchu's task was very difficult, as Adrian Pusey had already hit the quaffle into their frame first, scoring 10 points. Then Marcus also launched an attack. This time goalkeeper Grant did not fail and save the quaffle, but Randolph failed to intercept Slytherin's third chaser Graham and was defeated by the Slytherin team. Another 10 points. The game was very tense, and the gap between the brooms made it difficult for Ravenclaw's chasers to grab the ball, which was always snatched away by the Marcus trio halfway through. Zhongchu was scurrying around in the air anxiously. She couldn't find the golden snitch because he hadn't appeared yet. Zhongchu raised his head and looked at Cyrus, who seemed a little leisurely in the sky at the moment, and couldn't help but feel very annoyed. Is this guy here to compete? Single quote. In her opinion, Cyrus at this moment seemed to be just showing off, not looking for the golden snitch at all. Did he think that before he caught the golden snitch and ended the game, the Slytherin team could lead the Ravenclaw team by 150 points? Isn't that too contemptuous? This is simply contempt for their Ravenclaw team. But soon, she would rather Cyrus stayed in the sky and stopped moving. Facing Slytherin's fierce attack, Roger adopted another counterattack method, the Parkin Pliers tactic. He and Jeremy found Adrian together, approaching him from both wings to block his escape route, while Randolph lowered his body and rushed straight towards Adrian from the front, forcing him to give up the quaffle in his hand. 3 players blocking 1 player was very risky, as Slytherin's 2 remaining chasers would be left unguarded. But Roger had no other choice. If Ravenclaw didn't score again, the score gap between the 2 sides would get wider and wider. Now he could only place his hopes on the rest of the team, hoping that Keeper Grant could successfully hold the goal, or that 2 batters could intercept Slytherin's attack with bludgers. His 2 hitters were very powerful. Jason and Duncan directly played a double hit, which greatly enhanced the power of the bludger. The bludger flew out quickly and hit Graham, who originally wanted to come over to help Adrian. Graham quickly lowered his head, but the bludger did not pass through his head, but hit the tail of the broom. This made him lose his balance and fell to the ground like a rolling stone. This tense scene immediately attracted exclamations from the audience. Even if most people didn't like Slytherin's style, they couldn't help but worry about Graham's safety. If you fell from such a height, you would have to break at least a few ribs. If you were not careful, it would not be impossible to break your cervical spine and die on the spot. Even Jason and Duncan were a little worried. However, watching Graham hit his head on the ground, not many people reacted in horror. Mrs. Huo-Chi, who was the referee, became a decoration as always. Only Dumbledore stood up from the high platform, silently raised his right hand, and recited half a spell. Damping. Then, a bolt of green lightning fell down in an instant, cutting off his spell and piercing the shrill and noisy screams. Cyrus dived down at almost a straight angle, and the performance of Nimbus 2001 was brought to its maximum. In fact, even a series sweeping broom is fast enough to handle most games. No player has the ability to fly at full speed on a small court because they can't stop. For every upgrade of the flying broomstick, for Quidditch players, the improvement in speed is secondary. The optimization of acceleration, agility, braking ability, balance, etc. are what the players value most. But now, Cyrus is driving the final glory of the Nimbus series, increasing the speed to the extreme. Everyone only saw a green shadow that was too fast to be seen. Slytherin's green robe was pulled long behind, like a green snake shadow. To put it bluntly, he only had to blink his eyelids and he would immediately hit the solid ground of the playground at a speed of nearly 150 km per hour. When the time comes, he will, no, I should say Malfoy's body will turn into a delicious Malfoy cake. The wind blowing against my face was like a slap in the face, making my cheeks hurt. In the blink of an eye, Cyrus reached out and grabbed Graham's arm. He cast several shock-absorbing spells to prevent Graham's arm from being ripped off directly. At this time, his pupils were covered by green grass. The front end of the broom is almost touching the ground. About to hit, Cyrus gritted his teeth, grabbed the broom head hard with his other hand, and pulled it back as if pulling the joystick of an airplane, his whole body leaning back. Click. A crisp sound. The tip of Nimbus 2001 drew a mark on the ground, and the front end of the broom broke directly. The polished broom handle flew out and broke a beam. Then, Cyrus completed an extreme turn, and the flying broom, which had become shorter, soared into the sky again. He successfully saved Graham. The entire arena was silent for almost half a minute, as if someone had used magic to isolate everyone's voices. Then, there were cheers that echoed through the clouds. Even the Gryffindor wizards, who had always been at odds with Slytherin, went crazy. George and Fred put aside their prejudices and stepped on the heads of the 2 unknown little wizards in front of them, waving their arms and shouting, "Malfoy, our king!" Harry and Ron were stunned. "I didn't know he could fly so well. He can definitely join the Quidditch team and win the World Championship," Ron said with admiration. "World Champion." Wood came out of nowhere, his eyes shining. "No. He can go down in history." "What is a World Champion?" If this were in Japan, Gaoluo would be a Quidditch immortal. "Malfoy, our king. Malfoy, our king. Malfoy, our king." History will always remember this day. The enthusiastic Quidditch fans were screaming, and Professor McGonagall almost fainted. This enthusiasm immediately infected many young wizards who were not so enthusiastic about Quidditch. Even Hermione thinks Cyrus is incredibly handsome. If there was anything that made her feel a little regretful, it was that Cyrus was now using Malfoy's face. If it were Mr. Riddle himself, she would have wanted to write him a love letter on the spot. Compared to the excited audience, the players on the field were very quiet. Graham was covered in a cold sweat and thanked Cyrus with both fear and gratitude. "Thank you, Malfoy. Don't worry, it's time for us to fight back." Cyrus patted his shoulder hard, and the two of them rose at the same time. The shorter broom was a little unbalanced, but it was no problem after the game. Jason and Duncan flew over with apologetic expressions. "Sorry, Graham." "Don't worry, you're not breaking the rules," Sellers said before Graham could get angry. Hearing what he said, Graham was naturally embarrassed to lose his temper, but thought in his heart that he must show some color to Ravenclaw. After confirming that it was a false alarm, Mrs. Huochi breathed a sigh of relief and blew the silver whistle. The game continues. The 14 people on the field moved around again. This time, Cyrus did not continue to watch. He was quite bored staying in the sky. At this moment, he held the broken gap of the broom handle with both hands and changed the direction of the broom's flight by a small amount. He is only a seeker and cannot score points through the quaffle, but the rules of Quidditch do not mention that seekers cannot compete for the quaffle. It's just that this scene is simply not possible in other games. There is no seeker who does not look for the golden snitch and follows the quaffle everywhere. Unless he doesn't want to win. Sellers saw that Randolph had snatched the quaffle from Adrian. He immediately rushed out and approached the opponent from the left. Zhongchu thought he had discovered the traces of the golden snitch, and followed him without hesitation. The seeker always has a blind spot in his field of vision. Sometimes he cannot spot the snitch, so he must always pay attention to his opponent's every move. Therefore, when she noticed Cyrus starting to move, she rushed over with Cyrus without hesitation. Cyrus noticed her immediately. Cho Chang in real life is much cuter than Cho Chang in the movie, and now Cyrus can understand why Harry is fascinated by him. This is indeed a cute little girl with delicate skin, a small nose, and almond-sized eyes like sparkling black lakes under the sun. She has the gentleness and elegance of an Oriental, but her personality is not as weak as she looks. After discovering Cyrus's actions, she immediately lowered her body and rushed over, intending to hit Cyrus's shoulder with her shoulder in an attempt to knock Cyrus away from his original flight path. But she didn't get it. Cyrus, who had turned on the supersensory spell, could feel the changes in the airflow behind him and the sound of the opponent breaking through the air as he flew without even using his eyes. Therefore, at the moment when Zhongchu hit him, Cyrus was hung upside down and his body fell down. He seemed to be Zhongchu's reflection on the mirror in the sky. The two were close to each other. This way of flying unheard of. But Zhongchu had no time to care about anything else. She looked forward eagerly, looking for the golden shadow, but all she saw was nothingness. "Where's the golden snitch? The golden snitch? Who told you that the snitch was here?" The upside-down Cyrus said strangely. "The golden snitch appears. Has your super-sensory spell failed?" He actually didn't even notice the golden snitch appeared. "There is no snitch, why did you suddenly speed up and fly this way?" Zhongchu shouted in frustration. She was nervous for a long time, but she didn't expect that it was just a fake move by the other party. "No one stipulates that you can't fly around here." Cyrus curled his lips. He already understood why Zhongchu suddenly surrounded him. "I just intend to interfere with your chaser's attack." These words made Zhongchu very angry. Sellers' behavior is certainly not a foul, but if the opponent's seeker doesn't focus on the snitch, isn't this just looking down on himself and thinking that he can't find the golden snitch? She lowered her head and glared at Cyrus angrily with her bright black eyes. But despite being angry, she couldn't help but admire Cyrus's flying skills. Even he had to admit that Cyrus' performance in this game was amazing. Whether it was the extreme slalom just now or the current upside-down flight, he was completely different from Malfoy in the last game. Of course, there are actually two people. She was very curious about how much rigorous training Malfoy had undergone during this period of time to achieve such success. She couldn't help but feel ashamed that she had underestimated the opponent before going on the court. She even admires him a little. With Malfoy's current flying ability, it would not be surprising if he could become a world-renowned Quidditch star in time. Maybe I should ask him for an autograph after the game. Zhongchu has a lot of thoughts, but the most important thing now is the game itself. Cyrus' shadow-like flying style made her feel very uncomfortable. Although there was almost no contact between the two, Zhongchu felt like she was being restrained. She immediately pulled up the broom handle and broke away from the scene. Merged planets fly the same way as satellites. At this time, the score gap between the two teams has become wider and wider. The Slytherin team scored again. Lee Jordan shouted hard. The current score is that the Slytherin team leads by 70 points, 80 points. Marcus Flint scored another goal. I didn't expect Slytherin to still have some strength when he plays well and doesn't foul. It seems that Mr. Malfoy's generous broom really helped them a lot. Plum. Mag roared dissatisfied. Lee immediately stopped pulling Slytherin and continued to explain. As you can see, Zhongchu escaped from Malfoy's upside-down flight. This flying method put a lot of pressure on her. It was really wonderful, but Malfoy kept flying upside down. Are you feeling dizzy? Can Zhongchu catch the golden snitch before the score between the two sides is stretched by more than 150 points? The golden snitch hasn't appeared yet. It has appeared. Malfoy found it. They are flying upward. Zhongchu the players followed. Lee suddenly raised everyone's hearts. On the field, the green shadow flew up into the sky like a rocket, and everyone couldn't help but raise their heads. A bright light and shadow instantly made them dizzy. The sun's rays are too dazzling. Is there really a golden snitch? Hermione and Ron looked up and saw nothing. Only Harry squinted his eyes and saw a dark shadow that seemed to be shaking in the distance. Although he couldn't see clearly, he was sure that it was the snitch. This is incredible. If we hadn't seen him flying over, who would have discovered where the snitch was? He exclaimed. He will become the greatest seeker in the world. He won't. Ginny shook her head. Mr. Riddle won't regard Quidditch as his career, Harry. It doesn't mean much to him. Harry didn't quite understand this. Career, such a word is still too far away for him. But Harry didn't understand how Quidditch could be meaningless. He felt that Quidditch was almost the most interesting thing in the world. Moreover, what he is best at is Quidditch. From Quidditch, Harry can feel the value of his existence. I can understand the joy of people cheering for me. This is different from people calling him the boy who lived and thinking he killed Voldemort. That kind of praise was something he couldn't accept with peace of mind. He had no idea what happened that night, not to mention that both his parents were killed that night. This was never a pleasant thing for him. He was in a trance for a moment, and then he was awakened by the exclamation. Everyone looked nervous. What's wrong? Ginny and Hermione were too anxious to speak, and Ron nervously held Harry's forearm. There's something wrong with the broom. What? Harry quickly took the telescope from Hermione's hand. Through the lens, he saw the broom in Cyrus's hand shaking violently, as if it was about to fall apart. It must have been the rescue just now. It broke down when it was flying, and to be honest, it's a miracle that it can still fly. He has to stop. Hermione was so panicked that her entire face lost all color. Stop. You are mistaken. He is still accelerating. Ron seemed to have seen a ghost. He is simply crazy. If the broom falls apart at that height, he will fall to his death. Hearing these words, Ginny almost fainted. We have to stop the game. Hermione stood up and ran towards Dumbledore. But there were so many little wizards that everyone stood up and blocked the road. I'm afraid the broom won't hold up even before she leaves the Gryffindor position. Of course, Cyrus knows his situation better than anyone else. The malfunction of the flying broom cannot be easily solved with a repair spell. Even if it could be done, Cyrus would not be able to cast such a spell beyond Malfoy's level in full view of the public. But let him give up the game. The desire to win in Cyrus's heart was not allowed. No matter what, he is also a time traveler, and it is Lao Fu's soul who takes his body. Wouldn't it be ridiculous if he lost to a little girl? And in fact, the broom may not be able to hold it. Even if it really can't hold it, there is nothing to be afraid of. First of all, it was impossible for Dumbledore to watch the school director's son fall and get injured. Secondly, even if old Dang was indifferent, Cyrus himself had many ways to save his life. Although the flying spell is inconvenient to use, if you reduce the shock and adjust your landing posture, you will only break one hand at most. In the magic world, breaking a hand is no different from scratching a piece of skin. Besides, it's not him who hurts. Therefore, although he realized that the broom could no longer hold on, he still accelerated. Faster. In Cyrus' pupils, the shadow of the snitch became increasingly clear. It seems like you just have to reach out and get it. He stretched out his hand and lunged forward, but his fingertips missed the snitch. The hands are too short. He had forgotten that this body belonged to Draco Malfoy. And because of this small movement, the broom he was riding on completely lost its balance, shaking violently and crazily like a fierce horse. Cyrus cast several spells to make himself feel less bumpy. But when he exerted force with his right foot, he accidentally broke the pedal of the broom. Half of the metal pedal fell off and almost hit Zhongchu, who was chasing after him. "You have to slow down, Malfoy," Zhongchu shouted with all his strength. The broomstick Cyrus was riding was scary just to look at. After one of the pedals fell off, even the broom hair on his tail began to loosen. Cyrus turned a deaf ear. "Malfoy, stop it." The two people rushed all the way into a huge cloud. Even the damaged Nimbus 2001 could not match the speed of the old antique in Zhongchu's hand. She failed to catch up with Cyrus and lost him in the clouds. "He's crazy." Nearly 1,000 teachers and students raised their heads and looked nervously at the sky, but there was nothing there except the dazzling sunshine and thick clouds. Then the clouds broke. A black shadow fell down. Dumbledore saw it clearly. It was Malfoy. It can be said that Malfoy's performance today was beyond his expectations, it was so outstanding. It's simply excellent to the point of being abnormal. Is this still Malfoy? But Dumbledore did not suspect that Malfoy was the one who stole the Horcrux and was controlled by Tom Riddle. Because he knew Tom so well. Tom would never be too ostentatious without ensuring his own safety. And Tom Riddle couldn't have saved anyone. Single quote. Sellers' action in rescuing Graham completely cleared him of suspicion. The Dark Lord only takes other people's lives, so how can he possibly save others? Looking at the rapidly falling figure, Dumbledore raised his arms again. Shock reduction and speed stop. Cyrus felt as if there was a soft force on his back lifting him up. He seemed to be hitting the wool mat layer by layer, and his falling speed became slower and slower. He knew immediately that it was Dumbledore who had taken action. "So I just didn't care about anything and let myself hit the ground." Mrs. Hooch blew the silver whistle and swooped down. Cyrus immediately took out the golden snitch in his hand. After giving up, he was carried into the school doctor's office by a large group of people cheering. It was as if they were celebrating that they were finally hospitalized. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.